Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 483. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, joined as always by my co-host Jim. So this was our light episode, right? So says the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, the Duke of You-Know, and the elder statesman of the podcast.
How's it going, hey?
So Jim and I, as we're heading to 500 shows, we were trying to look at ways to double up and record shows back to back. And one of them was, being able to divide up content so that way it would be more manageable. Well, we divided up the review of these two parts of our crossover for the intention of doing two episodes and doing them in depth. And this wound up being a monster episode. I actually, you know what, though? I think one of the things that's great about doing this podcast has been you and I have always let the conversation drive the length. And I feel we've never cut any conversation short. We've tried to have a good beginning, middle, and ending. And I think that's something that people who've listened for a long time appreciate. So this organically wound up being something far more than we intended. Some of that was due to some speeding bullets in the beginning, some listener voicemails at the end that were really great. So I thank you for everybody that called in. Sometimes the show just goes where it does, and I'm glad. I'd rather that be something that we always have. We let the show dictate itself. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Mr. Segulin. We are sponsored this episode by DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. I hazard to guess, but what's going on over at DCBService.com?
Well, first off, you know what's going on. Come on. Bundles, 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 bundles. Yes, they're continuing their support of the Rebirth. They're continuing their support of Vertigo, continuing the support of the Young Animals, and they're giving these multiple bundles 50% off. So check out what's in the bundles. They keep updating these bundles. So the ones added now on Justice League of America, another one they just added into the Super Sons into it. So as these bundles are changing, as new titles are coming in, they're updating it. Check it out. See what they're changing. Thank you, DCBS. But there's something else. There's something else that they're giving us 50% off on, and that is the Wonder Woman George Perez Omnibus hardcovers, Volume 1 and Volume 2. That's right, both of them, 50% off. Volume 1's only $37.50. Volume 2 is $49.99. This will take you the Perez run from issue 1 through 45, plus a couple annuals thrown in the mix as well. So this is right here is a great deal. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com. I'm a big fan of this. And actually, some of this is linked to what you were just talking about. They have the Batman hardcover Volume 1 epilogue. They also have the Superman, the Golden Age Omnibus Volume 3 hardcover. That's 50% off. Actually, the Batman is 50% off, only $11.49. The Superman is 50% off, only $37.50. Unwritten Deluxe hardcover. Book 1, 50% off, only $14.99. Big fan of Unwritten. The Batman and Robin Adventures trade paperback Volume 1 is 50% off, only $9.99. The Omnibus is the one I was referencing before when it links to you, and this is the Volume 3 of this. It collects Action Comics 48 to 63, Superman 16 to 23, World's Finest Comics 6 to 10. It's an amazing 720-page volume for $37.50. That's a lot of content. These omnibuses are hard to pass up because, to the point of the ones that you're referencing, the Wonder Woman ones and the Superman ones, if you haven't read this work, it's the way to get it. I mean, where else are you going to get, full runs in this condition? I mean, it's brand new condition being delivered to you this way. For me, the Golden Age stuff, I've always read broken runs of it. I want to read more of the Golden Age Superman. I'm on board for this. These omnibuses I jumped on late, to be honest. A lot of that's due to time and money. I'm starting to collect more of them, they're really well-produced volumes. To me, what the difference between these and the showcase volumes is the page count and quality. They're using better paper, It's full color. You're also getting it in a nice bound hardcover. It's hard to pass up. I hope these are successful because, man, it's a lot of content. 720 pages of Superman stories. I mean, this is great stuff. So, I don't know. I'm on board. I do want to reference, too, that DCBService.com is a digital partner. Whether you do Comixology or My Digital Comics, connect those accounts to your DCB Service account. Shop through their portal and earn 5% of those purchases towards your DCB Service order. So I want to thank them for sponsoring our show. Mr. Seguin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Well, Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow TV shows. We continue our discussion on Invasion. So if you haven't read the show, if you haven't watched the shows, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some television.
There it is, going into that tunnel.
All right, Jim, so we're going to be kicking into the second of our two-part discussion on the big Invasion crossover. And we're going to be focused this episode on Arrow and Legends of Tomorrow, the two other shows in this. Before we kick into that, though, I wanted to talk a little bit about just how great superhero TV is in general now. I ended up getting, my wife's ready to head on vacation from school, and I work during a portion of the time that she's off. So, I ended up grabbing like Netflix, which we haven't had in a while, and which means I have access to a lot of the Marvel shows that are on there that I haven't seen. And I watched Daredevil season 1 when it first came out and loved it. Loved every minute of it. Thought it was phenomenal. So, but I haven't seen a lot of the other Marvel shows, like Jessica Jones, Luke Cage just came out, season 2 of Daredevil came on. So, and then I guess there's the Defenders show and Iron Fist are coming. So they got a lot of stuff on there, content-wise. So I was like, do I go and start with Jessica Jones and then go to Daredevil season 2, or do I, start over and kind of just watch Daredevil and enjoy that experience again? I'm a Daredevil junkie, so I started watching Daredevil again, and I literally, in like a 3-day stretch, I'm almost at the end of season 1. I just couldn't stop watching this doggone thing. It's really phenomenal. And it's great because we have so much product, whether, you're on Netflix or just regular television or, there's just a lot of different options out there for superhero television shows, film, animated series. Justice League Action's out now. Have you seen any of that?
No, I haven't.
I just added that on my DVR. I've got DirecTV, and it popped up as an option. Apparently, they seem to know what I like. And I didn't realize that. I knew this was coming soon. I didn't realize it was a thing now. So we'll probably next episode, on Speeding Bullets, chat a little bit about it, because I just set one of them to record. So I haven't seen this thing yet, but I'm excited for it because, it's in many ways the spiritual successor to the Justice League cartoon before. They're supposed to have a lot of characters on it. So I just want to see if it's good. I want to see the writing on it. The writing is going to be the key on it because, animation in and of itself, there's a lot of talented animators out there. So I'm sure that part's going to be cool. The thing that always worked about the previous cartoons from the Dini and Timverse, whatever you want to call that, was the fact that the writing was so strong. I mean, they were pulling in a lot of really great writers. So if this has strong writing, this could be really awesome. And we got the Young Justice coming back eventually. They're doing another season of that out of nowhere. So, I mean, there's some really cool stuff coming down the pike for superhero television. And I'm glad that they're giving more of these shows a chance because as far as geek culture goes right now, I mean, I saw Rogue One this week and was blown away. I heard on a couple different threads that it was polarizing. Like some people loved it, some people hated it. I'm going to be honest, as a Star Wars geek, this one may have surpassed the last movie for me. Because I really enjoyed the last movie, and I think it was a fan nostalgia fest. But this one, I think, because it was such an original story, and the characters were new, and I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just going to say just general impressions of it. I really was blown away by this, because it's the first side story we're getting, which this is supposed to be an every other year thing. Now, I know the next one's Han Solo. This got me excited for the Han Solo movie. Just because I'm like, if they're doing this good, I can't imagine what the Han Solo movie is going to be like. And I won't spoil anything other than to say that they really found a great way to connect this film to everything else. So cool. It was really, really a fun experience. I went with a couple of people I work with, and we just had a really good time seeing it. So I'd be curious just in the Facebook group just to see what people thought about this. And I know there's a thread already going. I'd love to see what people's reactions are, because I really had fun. And honestly, that's part of the joy of these things. Kind of the fun has become a big word for me. If I'm not having fun, I'm a little worried.
Yeah, movies need to have that now for me. It's one of those things I've been avoiding, drama movies. I've been avoiding, just the serious stuff that makes you feel. I want to have fun. I want to laugh. I want to, and there's variations on fun. There's scared fun. There's fun. There's ha-ha, laugh, funny, goofy, stupid fun. There's variations on the term fun for me. But as a general rule, I'm avoiding any of the based on a real life, the tragic story, the heart-wrenching. If the words heart-wrenching are in the promo, I don't watch the movie, because I don't want that. I want to enjoy myself. And it's there's a lot of really great, amazing movies out there that I'm probably never going to see, just because I don't want to be depressed when I walk out of a movie theater.
Have you done any comic reading this week?
A little bit, very little.
I've
been absolutely crazy with work and variations on life.
And I know you and I have set up like what we're going to be doing for our next two shows as far as what comic books we're reading. I started reading Action Comics and getting caught up on that, because it's one of the books that I want to talk about coming up. And man, is that a good read. I'm just really excited to talk about. We've been loving the Superman book so much because of the creative team on there and how it has everything that we loved about the old Batman and Robin series. But this really is a pretty phenomenal book. And I can't wait to talk about it, because it examines the whole Superman verse from the other side, the other angle that isn't covered in the Superman book. So it's, I don't know, DC's batting really high for me right now. Like, I like playing catch up on these books. I like actually having, a bunch of them to read and going through and really enjoying that. You know what I ended up grabbing this week that I was reading? It's like I've got enough catch up books to be reading right now. I shouldn't be reading something old. I pulled out, I've got those Absolute Editions from Sandman, right? I've got the whole set. I never read them. I read Sandman when it was out, and I read the whole series and really enjoyed it, and I've read it more than once, but I've never read it in the Absolute. So I ended up pulling through that, and I'm like, you know what, these aren't volumes that I bought to sit on the shelf. They're volumes that I bought to read and enjoy in the expanded format, the larger artwork, to be able to really enjoy that. It starts on that Preludes and Nocturnes story, and man, is it just a gorgeous, gorgeous book. I don't know if anybody listening to this hasn't picked up Absolute Editions, but if you've got a favorite book that you've enjoyed and it's out in Absolute, go and grab it. It's great for that piece. On the other side of it, if there's a classic series that because they just put Why the Last Man, they started running that in Absolute Editions, and I'm going to pick that up. If there's a series that you haven't read, Planetary. I read Planetary for the first time in Absolute Edition. That was a great way to experience that series because it's known for its artwork, and it's gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. John Cassaday, Laura Martin on colors, David Barron, who's been on the show, has done color work on that. I believe our friend Alan Pasalacqua did some color work on that. I'd have to look back at the series to see all the credits. But it's just a beautiful book. It's Warren Ellis, incredibly well written. And man, to read it in that type of format is breathtaking. I love digital, just like the next guy. I mean, I'm a big digital junkie. I like, reading things on my iPad and stuff like that. It's nice to sit down with one of these big volumes from time to time, have that open, and just really feel the page turns and just see that artwork, with the ink and everything like that on the page. Those Absolute Editions, there's one thing I will keep getting, it's the Absolute Editions, just because I'm really digging those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really, Sandman is one I would give the highest possible recommendation to. If you're a listener of this and you have never, you haven't delved into Vertigo, Sandman there's a reason why that series is so renowned, and man, does that Absolute format do it justice.
Yeah, I know, and there is something about that massive tome in front of you, and you're just that the sound the pages make. I always like that for some odd reason. That when I'm reading my Absolutes, because I like you, I bought those to read them, and I kind of enjoy a hardcover when I'm reading and rereading because it feels like to me like it's gonna last even longer. Then with the Absolutes, with the larger sizes, just the appearance, the feel, the experience of sitting down and just reading them. It's kind of cool. It's more than just the meat of the story, the actual experience of it.
Have you picked up any of the omnibuses? Are you into that at all?
I pick up omnibuses sparingly.
Okay.
Because it'll depend on what the series is and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, sure, let me jump on that one. But it's one of those things where I was like, I've got so many books now that I haven't read that I'm like, if I keep buying more, I'm just gonna have this one day. My house, I'm gonna be a episode of Hoarders where I'm buried in stacks of absolute books, and the Hoarders people like, we gotta get rid of it. It's like, no, I haven't read that one yet. No. That's I'm gonna be one of those crazy hoarders, and it's just gonna be pure comic books and absolutes, and some of them will still be in the plastic, and they'll hold up the book, say, see, it's in the plastic, you haven't even opened this yet.
And it's holding up your coffee table. You know what I'm saying? Absolute editions I'm probably going to just keep collecting because I really enjoy the format. And there hasn't been one. I think they're releasing them for titles that are really special. So those are ones where I got the Batman Court of Owls one. That's a great story, and that in an absolute edition I really want. So, there's been nothing so far that I've gotten. The Infinite Crisis one, I've got that one. They're big stories with great artwork that are epic, so you kind of want to read them in that format. The omnibuses, I'm more like you. I don't get every one of them, but I'll tell you the one I've started paging through, and I've got too many books going right now, but this is one I'll keep reading as well. The JSA omnibuses. There's 3 of them. It's another one where I grabbed them and I haven't been reading them yet. I just haven't had time to get around to it. So I've kind of got myself balanced between catching up on current reads and reading some classics. Sandman's what I'm currently on, and the JSA omnibuses. There's 3 of them, and it collects everything. It's the entire Jeff Johns, David Goyer, James Robinson. Most of it was Jeff Johns. So, I really should emphasize Jeff Johns on that. But it's one of my shortlist favorite runs of any book of all time. The writing is absolutely breathtaking. It was a need. So I started reading this again. It's a need in the sense that to revisit that from issue 1, because I haven't read issue 1 of that in years. To start reading issue 1 and seeing the development of a lot of these characters, because that's where Stargirl, she came from Stars and Stripes, that series, but really was developed in this book. We had the new Sandman, the new Mr. Terrific. People were being introduced, and the classic characters mixed in. It was a great balance of both. The series is so well written and still so contemporary. It holds up. I was reading, I'm like, wow, this could be released right now and people would be gaga over it. I want a Justice Society of America, not in place of Earth 2. I want a Justice Society of America back again, though, that has this. And you've got to really find the right writer that understands how to create this book. Because, wow, it felt classic, yet modern. And to be able to achieve that balance where you're looking at it and you feel nostalgic for something that it's new. So it's especially putting new characters in there. The new characters felt like they were different than your current contemporary characters. They felt like they belonged a part of Justice Society versus being in Justice League or any other team. There's something to be said about that. And it's just a great series. It holds up incredibly well. And if you haven't read it, the omnibuses are the way to go. I know In Stock Trades has them because that's where I ended up grabbing them from. They were ones because I already have the singles and I'd gotten the, trades as they gradually came out. I'm like, do I really need this? So I wound up a while ago eBaying my trades because I'm like, if I'm going to have the omnibuses, there's no reason for me to have these. And I'm trying to do that as I'm rebuying certain things where I'm like, I don't need 3 versions of this. I need to really pare it down to, I want to keep my singles because they're part of my collection. But in the end, having these and these nice hardcovers where I've gotten 3 volumes the entire series, that really would be my go-to, more than even pulling out the singles. Because I enjoy reading, when it comes to going back and revisiting something, even more than the single issues, I like reading them in a hardcover format. And man, this JSA, it's a big tome. And it's gorgeous. It's really, really great. It's one I would have preferred it in an absolute edition because that's my preferred format when I'm collecting something in hardcovers. But I'll do an omnibus if you're going to do something like this, where it's the whole series in 3 volumes, and they're still available. So if you haven't picked up that series and you've been kind of chomping at the bit to do it, it's inexpensive to do it this way because these omnibuses really collect a lot of content. And I'm getting the Batman omnibuses. They've done the ones, they're the classic ones in chronological, with the Detective and Batman and World's Finest in one volume. I haven't started reading them yet, but compared to, remember they were releasing for a short time the Batman chronological collections, and that kind of fizzled. They were so small that it would have taken forever to get the whole series. I hope these Batman omnibuses continue, because there's a lot of work along the way. There are really holes in my collection that I would love to have them in this format, because they look nice on a shelf. For me, I always go back to the readability. They're full color. The page quality's high, and it's not like newsprint or anything like that. Like the showcase volumes I like having for, they're like a nice utility read. But my preference is if you can dump everything into an omnibus, oh man, it's just a great format. So I don't know. I guess that's where I've been at lately. I've been catching up on some of the books. I read Batman 12, which we're going to talk about next episode, which was so much to discuss there. Action Comics, I'm getting caught up on. Like Cave Carson. We're going to be talking about Aquaman coming up, and Suicide Squad, and Detective Comics. That's really can we do Detective Comics? Do you mind? I was kind of looking over books to read.
Sure, let's add Detective.
So I think that's our next two shows. We're gonna do 3 and 3 to come back a little bit sooner on you. So we're gonna do Batman, Action, and Cave Carson, and then Detective Comics, Aquaman, and Suicide Squad, just to start talking about some books, some classics, along with some ones that we really haven't talked about in Rebirth, or in that Young Animals collection. So because we haven't talked about Cave Carson on the show, so it'll be a good one. But anyway, this episode, let's kind of shift gears and start talking about Invasion. So Arrow's the next episode that we were going to be discussing. And man, when you take a look through like the previously on, in those two episodes, a lot was covered because Supergirl really wasn't a part of the crossover, but it was the lead-in to how she gets to our world. They showed again that scene where Barry was attacked. One of the creepier scenes I've seen on television in a while. The Dominators are well done on this one.
Oh, God, yeah. I love the look, love the feel, love the groove. That they really capture just that, the monster alien look. They really got a good job with that. And I was very pleased with how they're being portrayed here.
So Ollie was captured, and I loved the end of seeing Barry try to capture him, and then we see Ollie running through the woods. And I knew right away what was going on when I saw him running through the woods. I'm like, he's in his head. And yeah. I absolutely loved, this may have been my favorite episode of The Batch because of what it did. You got to see an alternate reality. And you can see how, for everyone involved, this would be like the life they could have had if different reasons were chosen, if different paths were chosen. Laurel, his life with Laurel. Laurel could have been his wife. She would still be alive. This is someone he deeply cared about. And to see her there and alive, and that path starting to go. His parents are both still alive. What a thing to be teased with. I don't know it's one of those things where you're like, I think I would be strong enough to get out of that. I don't know. Because they can't see that they're in creepy pods. All they see is what's in front of them. So to fight against that and to not make that choice, this really explores a lot of themes of friendship, of loyalty, of right and wrong, in spite of being given everything you've always wanted, but didn't know that you wanted.
Yeah.
And I really love that about this episode.
Well, and it's the true family, that because later on where, Speedy's like, I don't want to leave my family, but she knows who her true. She doesn't want to lose her family again. Well, she knows who her family is. Her family's Ollie. Her family is the team. And that's what pulls her back into reality. And it's that notion of what is family. And even when you get into the Team Arrow, where they're having their conversations and their dealings with the metas and just the support team running, trying to find Ollie, it is that concept of this dynamic of who they are. And I was glad that, like you, I immediately knew what was going on, but I was glad that they didn't drop the rest of Team Arrow and they didn't just make it an internal fight where Ollie has to realize what's going on and yada, yada, but there's actually an outside component working to try to communicate with them, try to locate them, to try to bring them back, and it's the support team is still functioning and still operating.
I also liked that this episode served as a way for everyone involved to kind of further some of the themes in this one. Ollie and Dig's relationship, was a focus of this one because we got to see how this was affecting Dig. I loved that everyone that was in there, from Thea to Ray, and to obviously to White Canary. Everyone got to see what this world was like for them and had to face that. And I really loved how that all played out. It made this super fun. Vibe. I love where they used Vibe's powers, and Vibe got to see them inside the spaceship. I got to admit, I loved the mix of creepy with cool because, I don't know, I'm a sci-fi geek. You are too. I grew up loving sci-fi. I love that I was torn between, man, this is scary, to, I do want to run around in there. And I love that felt that way for our characters in this, too. I found myself on this one really being a lot more in link with Felicity and Vibe than probably anybody else, because I was like, oh, man, I kind of think I would be in the same boat. I shouldn't want to go in there, but how can I not? It was fun.
Well, I liked Wild Dog, in this. Again, it's the meta, but not... it wasn't completely, he wasn't completely closed-minded to it. It's, right from the very beginning, you see where his stance on the metas are. And you understand it because he is just a regular, everyday guy. And I like, he was in, the opening scene, he's doing the salmon ladder. He's still working out. He's still keeping in peak shape, ready for the moment for when he's got to strike. And that's the thing where you have these normal people who are dealing with these extraordinary things. They have to keep themselves at peak, ready at any moment. And I love the fact that he is kind of that anti, but not completely closed-minded to it by the end.
You know what's great about this? It actually is reminiscent of any friendship group. You have, if you're lucky enough to have a diverse group of friends, your friends have a wide variety of backgrounds and interests, and you grow to respect those things. I mean, sometimes, they wind up being the things that bring you closer because you offer something to them and they offer something to you that is unique and outside of your traditional comfort zone. I really love that. Oh, I just saw the sequence where the flowers dropped off of the tray and Ollie caught it with one hand, and Thea comments on his sweet reflexes. I love during this sequence where there's holes start to be poked into the quote-unquote reality that's been crafted for these characters. It just made me so happy in this to see how that piece was happening. Your mind would naturally fight against it, and this world would fight back. So, I don't know, this part was really, really great.
And along with you, I agree. I love those scenes, but I was glad that wasn't the sole focus of this episode.
Agreed.
If it had been just that, I would have been upset. But the fact that we have these moments, we have these great moments with bringing back actors and actresses their characters have passed. I cheered, when I saw all these different dead people coming back, just because it's cool to see these actors, get back together again and actually work and be able to, the two sisters together. These two actresses have to be friends in real life. There's no way they're that good of actresses that you truly believe these two are family. 100%. Whenever I see these two interacting, I always think these are two sisters right here. It's to me, this is an absolute wonderful, just amazing job these two do. They really bring in. It's not just the lines they're giving. It's the mannerisms. It's the approach to each other. I absolutely love that. And it's one of those things that you get sometimes. You get these actors who are paired together. You're like, they got it. They got the right hit.
It's casting, and that's one of the things that's been a key to this show. Is you have to cast the right people together. I think, and when I say this show, I would say all of these shows. It's one of the things that I think I'm appreciating more and more about them is the care that's being put into casting, because I really do feel that these shows are incredibly well cast. I loved the bet that she had won her moment too with the canary necklace. Yet it quickly went back to denial, that doesn't matter. Whatever the spark was there, that it's more about the relationship, which is what you're talking about here. And I think that so works. Here's the thing. Whether they're friends in real life or not, I think is irrelevant, because I do think even if you're best friends with people, there's a difference between being that in real life and portraying that on screen emotionally for your audience. And I think you have to connect with some sense of friendship, but I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting sort of thing. I think you have to know how to channel what's inside you when you act. in order to put that on screen. I don't think it's as simple as they're friends in real life. I think that they can hate each other in real life and be able to tap into another friendship and make us believe it. I would like to believe they're best friends in real life too, because of the fact that I just think that they're super cool together like you do. And I absolutely loved those sequences. This was a lot of fan service at the same time developing a good story. And when you can put those together and make them work really well, there's something special about it. And this was really great story. Seeing him walking down the street with his dad, and the two of them are being mugged, and Green Arrow shows up on the screen. And I wasn't thinking, at first I was thinking, is it going to be Ollie seeing Ollie? I didn't think it would be Dig. And that part I really loved, because my first instinct was that that's Ollie seeing himself, and is that part of his fighting against this? I didn't think it was Dig at first. Did you think Dig?
No, I'm 100% with you on this one. I was thinking that was going to be the trigger that, kind of like, I'm remembering an old Batman cartoon where he was trapped in one of these type of worlds and he kept seeing the news flashes of the Batman on, the newspaper and whatnot and TV and things, and I kept thinking that's how it's going to be the connection, where he's going to have the confrontation between the Arrow, and it's going to be the drop of the hood, and it's going to be Ollie staring back at his own face, and that's going to be the trigger to wake him up. That's what I was thinking. It was going to be an individual trigger that wakes him out of it, not them going through a gateway.
Yeah, I'm with you. That part I think was really great about this story was the fact that there were surprises in what you would naturally assume from this.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking the fact that it was Diggle. I thought that was kind of cool as well.
I did too.
The fact that, because the explanation they gave where he needed to make amends for what he did, during the war and all that. So he came back to the city to make amends, and his brother's alive. Hey, his brother's in private security. Everything's great there. And I loved just that little twist on his story that, everything's happy and fine with his brother, and he's doing this.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the great thing about this was you got everything that you wanted from it. Because I wanted to see those emotional moments. I wanted to see Ollie torn about his parents and Thea torn about the parents being back. And obviously Laurel being a part of that. And seeing her sister. And I mean, just everything together. This was the life that could have been if you made different choices. And it isn't just different choices about being Arrow or not. It was prior to that. The guy that he was. The womanizer, the self-centered, selfish, I have money brat that he really was earlier on in life, that the island changed. To be able to see that now and go, we all say that. If I knew then what I know now, what I would do differently. I think the thing is, and I actually learned a lot from this, sometimes you can't go back. As much as you'd want to, you can't go back. You have to learn from those things and just keep going forward to try and make this life a better one. And I like how this story was, as attractive as it was to go back, the world that they are in now and who they are now is because of the loss that they've faced, the tragedy they've faced. They've become better people because of it. They've made an impact because of it. That's been a theme this season in Arrow. Am I making a difference? Have I really done anything? Has, the city become any better because of me? And really wrestling with that and deciding on what should Team Arrow be moving forward? Who should he be moving forward? And dealing with past demons of murder and things like that. I love that this episode came at this time. It's part of the crossover, but deals with the themes that are going on in the main show, where the show is not being derailed by this. It's actually being enhanced. This enhances the show and moves it forward as the series kicks back in. That part felt really good to me.
Well, each of these side stories really did that, where it continued the story going. But it it continued the overarching invasion story arc, but it also didn't, forget what's going on in the individual story, in the individual title itself. So I'm agreeing with you completely on that. And it's, one of those things where you sit there and I keep wishing, that Dinah would be back, that Laurel would be back. And just seeing her interacting with her sister, seeing her interacting with Ollie, just seeing the way the dad is. I want to see him, make the comeback. I want to see him come back and be the cool guy that he was, as opposed to the issues he's currently dealing with. I'd love to see these characters just, though I know she's gone. Odds are we're probably not going to get her back, but I would not complain. I wish they would bring her back. The dad's going down his path, and maybe eventually he'll recover. Maybe eventually he'll be able to come back to the guy he was, but he's not Captain Lance anymore. He's going to be whoever he's going to be, going in the future. And it's one of those weird things where I want to see these really good things happen to my friends, but I gotta love just how it plays out and how the story grows on its own.
As Ollie was seeing the different versions of Laurel there, he got to see her kind of morph into this kind of almost dead, empty vessel. When he was going through that sequence, I was, in a funny way, I was thinking of, I recently watched the Robot Chicken second DC Comics episode again. I don't know, have you seen all those?
No, I haven't seen them.
Oh my gosh. If there's one thing you want to get off of iTunes, there's been 3 of them, Robot Chicken DC Comics specials. They're the funniest thing in the world. I'm going to spoil one part of it because I can't not talk about this because it's funny. Okay. Green Arrow dies in it. They're doing all the superheroes are there for the funeral of Green Arrow. Batman's doing the speech about him. And he stops at one point and goes, all right, enough of this. I can't do this anymore. He goes, we all know what's going to happen. Some alternate dimension's going to open up, and he's going to come walking through, or some radiation's going to bring him back to life, and he's going to be just fine. And he was going through like 8 or 9 different things that we all know happen in comics. And he's like, why are we all weeping over this? We know he's going to be back. And then as they're flipping through the crowd, if everybody's kind of nodding along, Green Arrow was in the back row nodding along. I mean, it was just, it was really, really funny. If you haven't seen the Robot Chicken specials, I'll do a little sidebar on this one. As a DC fan, download these things and watch them. They're available on iTunes. I know they're available on DVD and Blu-ray. They've done 3 of them so far. I think only 3. If they've done a 4th one, let me know because I want to see it. And it's really clear that these guys are fans of comics. They really worked with DC to just poke some fun at the things that we love. The characters are done very similar to other Robot Chicken stuff where they're Migos action figures, basically. Nice. It's an absolute blast. I don't know why. I think it's because this is Green Arrow and he was a focus on that piece. I ended up, it was on my on demand and I was flipping through it. I'm like, oh, I haven't seen this since it was originally released. I watched it all through. Most of it focuses on the Legion of Doom and the second one because it was more villain focused, and man, it was funny. But anyway, back to this one and talking about Ollie Queen. Stephen Amell is somebody who I think has just developed throughout the Arrow series an interesting range of emotions that he's able to showcase. From, being happy Ollie to everything in between to the dark and grim. He really has a great range. And it's something, I don't know that I've always loved this show. I don't know that I thought it at the beginning. I always thought he was cool in the beginning, but I didn't notice the emotional range in the way that I do now. He's somebody who I think has grown as an actor in this show, and it was something I think this episode really spotlighted for me because we got to see him flip into the Ollie Queen Green Arrow mode, back to Ollie Queen, I'm happy, this could be my new life. Kind of like we saw him when he was married to when he was going to get married to Felicity, very early on when the two of them had went off together and started living together. All of that, comes back in now, and you see everything in between. You're faced with somebody who you loved who's back alive again. Both of your parents are alive again, yet everything feels wrong. What you hoped for is sitting in your face, and it feels wrong. I loved his portrayal of this. That was my linchpin on this one. I was really connected to him and enjoyed following along with him on the ride, which is always... In comics, that's my biggest thing. I really enjoy when I feel like I'm connected to my hero and going along on the ride with them. I felt this really worked really well in this episode because I really felt like he was the one I was most latched onto through this entire episode. And I think that answer can be different for different people, what characters they latched onto, because of how good the writing is. And I'm with you. I'm not poo-pooing the side stories that were going on with the new Team Arrow in present day. because I really do think that it was just as essential and just as phenomenal, and I love those characters. I think I was really focused on the you get what you want sequence, because that was the battle I wanted to see. How are they going to get out of this? Because I didn't want it to be about them being rescued from it. I wanted them to overcome it. And that was the victory battle that I was watching unfold on the screen. I wanted to see happen so well. And I thought they delivered that gangbusters in this.
God, yeah. And I loved I agree with you on his reactions to everything, where he's jumping back and forth between the emotions. Mm-hmm. But I love how this fantasy universe kept fighting him.
Yes.
Like when he's walking with his dad and he has those initial moments where he's starting to have some doubt and he looks up and he sees Smoke Industries, that's when the system gave him the mugger. Then later on when he's having more doubts and he's talking to Detective Lance, it was awesome how he had those moments where he's seeing the hood, bulletin board and this and that, and stuff's flashing to him. The system has Detective Lance go up and say, I'm really proud to have you as my son-in-law, and really pulled him back into the fantasy universe, And then even later on when he's confronting Diggle in the Arrow Cave, Felicity, who is a manifestation of the system, is once again trying to bring him back to the fantasy, trying to bring Diggle back into his fantasy that the system had crafted. So I thought that, for me, I loved when they have those moments of the system interjecting something to try to bring them back into the fantasy. It's protecting itself.
Yeah, and I think that was the piece that I really enjoyed about this one, was I think the emotional turmoil. And I think you were referencing it with the two sisters acting together. I think everyone in this really had some great moments to showcase a wide variety of emotions and in just a really well-developed, cool story. This is how I prefer my comic book crossovers. When a comic book is brought into a crossover, I think when you have good communication editorially in a company, they work with the writers to bring on board writers that really want to embrace your upcoming crossover. And they find a way to build their story so that it organically fits into a crossover and forwards the characters within the crossover. So when the crossover's done, you feel like it was an event that happened chronologically in the time frame for that character. I think it's logistically very hard to do. I'm sure for writers it can be very frustrating to do. But when you do it and you do it right, you get big payoffs like this that really, for the fans, make you go, wow. That was amazing. That was really cool. So I appreciate the extra effort that goes into it in working story so that way it will line up to make this kind of thing happen. And I think when you see it on television like this, I'm like, man, this is like the best of what comics do so well when they do these kind of crossovers right, paying off on the screen for us. Because there wasn't a show that awkwardly wound up in this one. Obviously, Legends of Tomorrow, because of their time travel nature, was the easiest one to plop into this.
Yeah.
And I appreciated the way they handled that. But these other shows in particular were the ones I loved. Supergirl's story leading in, Flash's story leading in, and Arrow's story leading right into this. It just really made this crossover feel more special to me because it didn't feel like plop. Oh, hey, it happened. Now we're going to go back to your story already in progress. This didn't feel like that, and I really appreciated that extra effort.
Yeah, definitely. And again, only thing that would have made this crossover better is a musical, a couple musical numbers, because we got a couple people on all these different universes who can sing. That'd be kind of neat. But again, I'm willing to part with the musical side if they give me this solid, just,
Those are arrows being shot at you because I don't see Ollie wanting to do a musical episode. And I honestly, emotionally, I fully support him shooting arrows at you. I'm hoping that you'll stop before one of them hits you. But if they don't, you're really taking one for the team.
You know what? Actually, it'd be kind of neat to get shot with the Green Arrow. Let's be honest. Let's just pause for a second and say that'd be kind of neat. Hey, look, see this wound right here? This was an arrow from the Green Arrow right here. As long as he doesn't kill me, which hopefully this is the non-kill Green Arrow I'm dealing with, not the killer one. But if I'm dealing with the non-killer, the one who's just going to wound me, maybe I'll walk around with a little limp. I'd be okay with that. I actually would be all right with just an arrow in me. Just so for the story, for the story factor, saying, hey, how'd you get that scar? Oh, I was talking smack about the green arrow and he shot me with an arrow. How cool is that?
You want to hear the better story? I got a better story than that one. Then I'm going to have people come over to my house and I can show them the arrow. And you know what? I don't have a scar. You know what? You're right, though. If you're going to get a scar, where are you going with that? You would want to get a scar from, like, something cool like that. There has to be a better story, though, than he shot me because I was mentioning singing. It would have to be, he accidentally shot me when I was pushing somebody out of the way who was going to be hurt, or something like that. We did a heroic story for you on this one because we got to really beef it up a bit. But I don't know how we got on this tangent.
Heroic story. Come on. No one will buy the heroic story. You tell this elaborate heroic story, then like, okay, what really happened?
Yeah, that's
Jim
true.
was talking about singing a musical episode and he got shot. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Oh, all right.
Now it's funny again. I love when, as this series goes on, we see him noticing certain areas on the map that make him recognize bits and pieces of what's going on in his world, where the Arrow Cave's located. You mentioned Smoke Industries, those type of things. I like that this was a mystery unfolding. It wasn't just being given everything you want. It was seeing that and seeing that world and I really found that world very interesting. Because we all want those happy moments, right? And Ray Palmer coming on the scene, I'm actually seeing that right now. I wish there'd been more time because I would have loved to have seen more opportunities for Ray to explore this world. Because this world wouldn't have had as much of a connection for Ray as it did the others involved. So it'd be kind of cool to see if Ray, why didn't Ray get his ex-wife there?
Yeah, well, he got Felicity.
Right. It would have been cool, though, for Ray to walk in Anna's alive.
Yeah, that would have been that would have been probably, that would have fit more for what Ray's desire. Though he and Felicity did have something special,
sure.
It always was that his first wife. She was always the one that, his motivation factor behind becoming the Atom was her. And all the stuff he's done was her. So I would have rather seen that, play out.
Yeah, that was the one where I was just questioning. I'm like, why didn't they make that choice? And I think the reason why they didn't make that choice was they were trying to keep him in the same place as the others. I wonder it's funny. I almost want to read the novelization of this because you know how novelizations sometimes have that thing that they can't fit into the movie or the single episode. I would love to have known the background reason as far as why Ray had to converge with all of them there. It was because they were all hooked up in the same machine. They were being reinforced by each other. I don't know.
Probably just the layout. It had to. You think about just how vast the universe would have to be if they were in different parts of the world. How crazy that would be. But even though Sarah, she was away from them and got brought into it. So wherever she was before showing up there, she had no memory of that. If you remember, that was one of the things, that was one of the lynches for bringing her back was started asking, Ollie asked her, hey, what do you remember? What's the last thing you remember? And she didn't have memory outside of being together. So I think it's have to be together, and it's the proximity because the universe would be too big if they didn't do that.
Sarah doesn't really compare to Ray because her dad and sister were both there. That was her home before this. She's kind of like very similar to Ollie and Dig and Thea. They were being brought into their home. Ray's kind of the fish out of water. Yes, he lived there, but it wouldn't be his real desire. I think here's the thing, though. I'm saying that, and it sounds like I'm disagreeing with you. I'm really not. I think you're hitting the nail on the head with this. I think because of the nature of the machinery that they're in, they have to be put into one simulation. And the simulation has to craft a world that fits all of them in order for it to keep reacting and reinforcing. If you make it too big, if you make the universe and the world that's in there too big, it's harder for it to compensate for the various battles that might be going in between. So I don't know. I think you're right. I actually 100% agree with everything. I think the choice is interesting. Like, couldn't they have had his wife there and had a story for him as far as why she was there? I don't know. I love that. I care enough about this episode that I'm thinking beyond it. And like, why didn't they do this to him? Why didn't they do that? And why didn't they do this to Sarah? And you're right. It's where the holes come in and they get poked into the whole thing. And that's part of the fun when you care enough about the episode that you're trying to find things wrong with it.
And the fact that there are holes is because, and the thing I love is the fact that there are holes aren't a lack of story, a lack of, the quality of the story. It's the fact that what this alien race is trying to do is impossible.
Right.
To cover every possible variance and cover every possible, there's going to be the holes. And that's part of the breakdown of the system. That's part of these individuals who are in this have to suspend, their disbelief. And they have to believe and, buy into this fantasy world or it breaks apart. And that's what we're seeing in the story playing out, where it is breaking down. And I like the fact that we see holes. Well, it's the same holes they're seeing, or different little variations on the holes they're seeing, which is causing their system to break down. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this one is you're right. Those parts where they winds up being kind of neat. This, I'm seeing the bit right now where the Flash and Supergirl are being confronted about the fact that they're, the fact that she's an alien and the fact that he's a meta. It's really exploring a world where we live in a world where people naturally distrust differences. That's not a justification of it. I like that this episode shows the importance of overcoming them and how you become something better when you do. I think it's one of the things I've always loved about comics growing up. I was a big fan of the X-Men growing up, and I thought they were persecuted. And to see characters persecuted like that. I was a geeky nerd, and I'm not saying like I was persecuted or anything like that, but certainly I was picked on for it. I mean, I grew up being a goofy, nerdy kid my whole life. So having that comic where you see people going through hardships far worse than anything you would have ever gone through, I think you kind of sit there and put things in perspective. And it also shows you in the world at large, there's people who really have gone through some horrid things. You really should be aware of that and put that in perspective and try to help those people, or try to be open-minded to new people and new experiences. Because I think that, by our nature, is something that's hard as a human being. We don't do that very well. And I think it's something to be aware of. I think it's something to grow beyond as we're trying to evolve as people and as a culture. And I think it's one of the things I've always loved about comics. There's social commentary that's in comic and comic-related medium, done through aliens and superpowers and different things like that. I think it really shines a light on some of society's ills and simple ways to start overcoming that. They aren't simple problems, and they aren't going to go away overnight. But when you take a look and see things like this, and they're exploring everything that's really a problem in our world, I don't know. I thought that part of this episode, and that wasn't in these perfect world sequences. They were happening in the present day, and that's what you were alluding to earlier. That wasn't fluff either. That was dealing with some really hard issues, and I loved that.
Oh God, yeah. It's one of those things about this character, the Wild Dog character.
Yes.
That. Yeah, he's one of those guys that when they first brought him on the scene, I was like, I don't know. But the actor, I've seen him in a couple stuff. I'm like, okay, he's a good actor. So I was like, I kind of backed off on any hatred because I knew I've seen him do stuff. I'm like, okay, I've seen him give me a nice variety, a nice range in other stuff he's done. So I'm like, all right, let's see, what he's got in the chops. And they're giving this character, they're letting him slowly build. And he's one of those guys that, like, I'm really digging this guy. I hope they don't get rid of him. I hope he's around for a little while, and they let the character become something.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing: when you look at evolving a show, you want to be careful because you want to give people enough familiar. The people that you've been latched onto the whole ride, you want them there. Not all of them though, because you got to make changes. And as they've made changes and evolved this show, some characters have gone to different programs. Some characters, their story ended. They came to a close. They came back in, like Laurel is a great example. I love the character of Laurel. Like you, if they find a way to make her come back, I'm going to geek out. I think it's going to be great because I think there's going to be a cool story there to be told. If they don't, that's cool too. I'm really enjoying the way that, because the actress I think is very good. I like seeing her in as the evil Canary, and from different Earths. And that's one of the nice things about multiple Earths in this. There's a lot of opportunity to really explore these characters again. And we're obviously not done with that. But she's somebody who I think has grown as an actress on this show. Because I think if you take a look back at her first season versus where she's come now, I think she's become a character that, an actress who has made a character who's very well-rounded and emotional. Instead of just pining after Ollie, which I think her character's story arc has benefited her. Wild Dog, I agree with you. He's somebody at the beginning I was kind of like, oh, I don't even know I like him. And now I adore the character. I think, and I think it's been that slow build. I think sometimes with some characters you need to, have faith in the story you're telling with them, give them a slow build throughout the season, and you build an attach rate. And the way you do that is by never taking your focus off of your Lynch characters. Ollie's obviously our big guy, Felicity, Dig, all those people. We got to see Thea. We got to see them continue to have arcs that were important. Lance, seeing him go through his particular story there, I think was great. Adding a compelling villains into this season of Arrow, I think has been benefit of the show. So while you're doing all that, you're developing him, and I think the whole Ragman story I thought was great. I love seeing the new Mr. Terrific, Arrowette. Everybody was really cool in this particular arc. So I can't wait to see more development of these characters, but he's the one I think that has most benefited from the slow build, because he's now a character who, when you see him in those sequences, you're like, but he's really a good dude. Even though he's clearly, in his own way having, I guess you would say, his own racist issues against the fact that she's an alien and that he's got meta powers, seeing him work through that and being human, I think it's something where, as humans, we got to be aware that we have certain character flaws. They're all different with all of us. I think sometimes hitting that point where you own up to it, face it, and try to gradually become something better. I think it's part of, we all talk about how people need to keep working on themselves. Comics, because of the serialized storytelling, I think shows you characters, especially Oliver Queen throughout his history, who continually need to work on themselves. And I think there's a message there. And it's something that's really cool, and I love seeing it play out on television. I don't know, it's just, this episode in particular had a lot of impact for me because of what it's doing here.
And it's funny because I do agree with you. He's got his issues, and like I said, I love the fact that he worked through it. But in the end, though, you look at it on the high level, you can kind of understand where he's coming from. It's not just he's anti-meta to be anti-meta. There is a super freaky factor to this. The fact that, Flash can go as fast as he can. And now there's somebody who can fly. Him dealing even with Ragman with the mystical side. There is that craziness that you have to, it's beyond. He's a guy who punches and shoots things. So for him to deal with people who are faster than the bullets he shoots, or the bullets bounce off them, that is a huge thing for him to deal with. And I like the fact that, it's not just about hatred with him. It is about the unknown. It is about fear of the unknown. It's about that what's out there next. If I have an alien that can fly, what's next? What's the next thing I'm dealing with? And I think that for me was something that really locked me into, his hatred, but not hatred, if that makes sense.
Remember that we're dealing with generalizations, right? Yeah. So I think that's the part of the message that was important to me. I agree with everything you're saying there, but the problem is it's causing him to generalize. And I think that is something as a society we have problems with. We generalize. And I say we, I mean all of us. I think it's something everybody can learn to grow beyond. And I think it's an interesting message. I just think it's cool. I love social issues being explored in media like this. I think when you do this in fiction, it's a lot easier to take a look at that and go, oh, that's a real human flaw. I mean, it's reality. And I think you can apply that then to real social issues that we're facing now and learn how to grow and be better people from it. And it's something that I think fiction has a unique way of shining a light on that I think is a lot harder to get through to people on, because it's almost like a scolding. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes it's better to look at it like this from the outside and really kind of go, oh, all right, this really applies to real life. And I don't know. I think getting there sometimes that way is a lot easier and does benefit long-term social change by the fact that if we really start talking about those issues through this avenue, I don't know, it's cool. I don't know. Ali being that character who's always been one in his comics, he's been the fighter for social change. I do love that they've got an episode on the show right now where social issues are right in your face. And in a way where it's not a scolding of everybody, it's more a realization of how do you move forward? What do you need to do? First thing you stop with the generalizations. You can't judge a book always by its cover. You got to get to know the person on the inside. That part was slick on this in the way that it was handled. I just think it was neat, and it's not a throwaway. And I think it's something that's going to be built upon throughout this series. And I think it has been since the beginning of this series. And I love that Wild Dog is just another avenue to it. It's cool. Lance had to go through this in his own way with his hatred of vigilantes. And we got to see that evolution. So I think there's some interesting social issues that have been explored on this. And I'm not doing it. I mean, we could spend hours just talking about the social issues this show has addressed. I think it's really great that comics do it. And I love that this show, which is so, I think, tapped into how to bring comics to life on television in the right way. Because this was the flagship show, right? It's the one that kicked it all off. And because of its popularity, it led to the other ones. Who would believe that we'd be sitting here now with 4 shows that are linked?
Yeah.
I mean, how great is this that we're actually having this conversation? And they're all good. That in and of itself is the miracle. It's really great to have this conversation right now because they're really, I think, this is how you bring comics to life. I think it's honestly, I made this argument last episode. I still stand behind it. I love film. And I love seeing the big spectacle of them. So don't get me wrong. I was talking about Rogue One in the beginning. I'll equally drool over the fact that I saw Doctor Strange recently and loved it just as much. I don't want comic-related film to go away. I think that's an awesome spectacle that you need. But because comics are such serialized storytelling, it's fun to see the episodes that you would never put into a film on TV. Because they are representative of monthly issues of the comics that really give you the strongest character development. And we're seeing them play out here on this show. And I think television is the far better medium for delivering comic storytelling than film. Not in place of, I love film, but there's something to these shows in the fact that they can do these kind of stories and then jump back into like their own arcs that are going on. That I don't know. I find this delivery method just so good right now. And I'm not just putting that on DC TV. You take a look at what's going on with Marvel TV right now. Take it beyond that. Take a look at shows like Walking Dead, for example. That are outside of that. Preacher, which is a Vertigo series, Lucifer, all that kind of stuff that's out there. I don't know. I think this medium is really, really good for delivering these stories.
I'm watching right now the big fight sequence when they were just leaving the wedding, and just seeing them just work together as a team was something that, again, I love the fight choreography, and this is in all of these different shows. They have, I don't know if it's the same fight crew or who's laying it out, but I love just how this thing plays out. Just, boom, 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 tossing the, arrows, tossing the bow, tossing swords, working together, just that great, cool dynamic between them. It's one of those just cool looking, just beautiful in the crazy chaos that it's violence. It's one of that. There can be an art form to fighting. There can be an art form to this style, and especially with some of these actors and actresses, you can see just by the close up, it's actually them. Doing some of the fighting, and I love that.
Yeah, and actually, this isn't taking anything away from the fight sequence. I do want to say something before we step away from the wedding. The desperation of Ali when he was confronting Laurel, saying, We got to elope. We got to get out of here as quickly as possible. Holes were being poked in this world. He was desperate to hold on to it, and to her in particular. I like how he just said, I love you. I want this to go forward. I want to marry you today. Now, let's just go as quickly as humanly possible. Then you kick into that great fight scene. And I loved seeing how Ali almost, the body and mind instinct started kicking into play. And you got to see that play out in that sequence with him and Dig fighting together. Not really realizing that they should know how to do that together.
Yeah.
Instinct takes over. And I always loved, my favorite characters were characters like Daredevil. Spider-Man even has this quality to him. They were the characters that were more street level. Batman. These are my characters that they have skills, mad skills. In Spider-Man's case, they have powers. I love Iron Fist, characters like that. But they are more grounded. And you get to see combat sequences like this. And I think our favorite artists, when we talk about them, that manage to portray these characters, Nightwing, characters like that, Huntress, Black Canary. Black Canary at her best is when she's portrayed as this great martial artist, I think is one of my favorite characters when they portray her well. Seeing this all play out on the screen with these fight sequences, man, I always wonder where the stunt people step in and where the actors step in. It's a great blending of, I think, talent on all ends. I think they know when to bring in the right people for those sequences, and they're effortless. So kudos to everybody involved with these, because, man, TV action right now is really cool. It suspends my disbelief in those moments, and you are so right to point out the fight choreography in this, because, man, it's awesome.
And then right after the cool fight choreography, once again, we get another emotional just outrage where Laurel shows up in the wedding dress and she's pleading for Ollie to stay, and it's that last ditch effort of the system to try to keep him in there, but it's also the last ditch effort of Ollie to keep this fantasy world going. Again, cool, hardcore, some great fight actions, some heart tug at the heartstrings, real moments. That's some of the great stuff that is Arrow, but is also this invasion storyline, is the different pieces. But that's something that I think Arrow really does. Well, actually, I can't even say just Arrow. They all do that great, where they have these emotional roller coasters, right along with the hardcore action, where one doesn't take away from the other. And it's part of just the nice flow through and the symmetry.
Ollie having to tell Laurel that he's not the person she fell in love with. In some ways for him, you're saying goodbye to this person that you loved. And in a way that maybe helped him grow as a character, had to figure out who he was in those sequences. And I really loved that about this. I felt a lot of character growth with him. And I think anybody can latch onto any character in this and feel that same character growth. But I don't know, for me, I'm a huge Ollie Queen fan, and I think when they give the time for this character in particular, the show is called Arrow. There should be some spotlight moments on him that make you go, wow, they really did some cool things with him in this. His leadership, seeing him, even from season 1, the character has grown so much. 5 seasons later, we've seen this awesome arc and awesome growth with him. This is a show, they keep talking about, I saw a couple recent articles out there, I don't know from what blogs they were from, has Arrow jumped the shark, is Arrow ready to end? Not when I see stuff like this. Yeah. I think, in all honesty, there's a lot of room for this show to continue moving on, and I can't wait to see where it goes from here. I think writing is the key. It's taking a look at where do we take him, because obviously they probably had a plan to get this show a certain number of seasons. So now you got to take a look at where does it go from here. I think they've got some great building blocks this season to keep this show going forward, to maintain it to be as interesting, if not more interesting than it's been all along. You can sometimes revamp a show and kick it up a notch. And I think this show's on the road to doing that because of the great characters and the great writing in it. And I don't know, this sequence for me was just kind of like, what a cool sense of closure with these two characters in that moment.
Yeah. Watching them escape from they're going through the Dominator ship. And the one thing I loved about that scene was the fact that you always have these weird things where people are just wandering through the space and they seem to know where they're going, but the character Ray Palmer says, yeah, it's an alien ship, but there are some basic rules, just some basic rules of design that all ships are going to adhere to. And I love that, just that right there, that quick little explanation. Denial, kind of gives you that, that acceptance of the fact that these humans would be able to walk through the ship and not be completely lost, or completely just wander around aimlessly. There's a reason why they seem like they know where they're going. I love that. Again, little explanation that isn't completely believable. I don't know, but it's believable enough for me, the suspension of disbelief, and for me to just continue on with the story and enjoy it.
Becomes someone else, becomes something else. As he's looking across that whole crowd of people and seeing each one that he's been touched. It really is funny how in this crossover, Tommy's there, everybody is there. For Ollie, he's been in this funk this season of, am I doing enough? Am I effective? Is my direction helping anybody? Is building this new team the right path to go, or am I just putting them in danger? Is the opposing force right about me? In many ways, this is almost a rally cry for him. Oh, yeah. And I love that about this show. I feel like right now, wow, this crossover has set him on such a path of, I'm ready for the second part of this season. And that part is really neat when you do this with a crossover. And that part was really neat. I liked the closure with every single character as he went across. And in many ways, seeing Roy and Laurel and the dad, I don't know. I just thought that was just really a really cool choice for the escape.
Oh, big time. That, again, the emotional connection right after a good hardcore action sequence. It's a great way to lock it in. Then you get a little bit more funny moments and you get some more action, and it's the kind of the way, you keep the story flowing, you keep the energy up, where you have these emotional moments, then you have high action, then you have emotional, and then just, you bounce back and forth. I like that. That's something that, again, it's a right, combination, and a good, just a good layout for this system.
I loved how Ragman noticed that it was related to the Torah and the numerology of that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love when comics bring in elements like that and show you the value of various characters on a team. It goes back to what I was saying earlier. That's where differences between friends and friendship groups become a key. It's one of the reasons why you should embrace getting to know people outside of your comfort zone and having them be a part of your world, because they challenge you, they move you forward, they bring things to the table that you would have never thought of, and they make you stronger. And I think that's something superhero team-ups and superhero team books, when they're really well written and they're allowed to develop characters, do this kind of stuff really, really well. Look at our favorite, you don't refer to Green Arrow very often as the Green Arrow book. You always refer to your favorite issues as Team Arrow.
Yeah.
And that dynamic. And I think there's a reason for that. And that's been brought to life. And I think in particular, this particular episode, where you get to see what it means to be Team Arrow. Sometimes it's fun to divide up the teams and intermix them. And that was what really worked well with this, I think.
Well, you think anytime you get Felicity and Cisco working together, come on, that's a great team up right there.
Yes.
Just, and throughout every one of these, whenever you have those two in the same room working together, it was a really cool, neat dynamic that they had going there. And then on, you're looking at Team Arrow with they're people who've already worked with each other, so you can't really say you're throwing them together. But just with the Ollie, Dinah, with Ollie, Canary and Diggle and Speedy and Ray and all of them just thrown together. That was, again, a really neat combo. Not just the physical combo, but just the personal and just the emotional combo. And then when this is going to lead into Legends of Tomorrow, again, more personal combo and just different team ups. And again, I was like, man, this is some cool stuff going on, and this is the way you portray this is the way you give me a team up. This is the way you give me a crossover story. Let me have pieces from both of the worlds working together that makes sense. Right.
And that's a pretty key piece of this whole thing. You're right. It needs to make sense. That part is pretty critical of this whole thing. I don't know. I really enjoyed this part. Do you have a favorite character of the new team? I mean, is it Wild Dog?
You know what? In a way, it's tough to say, but in a way, he is, one of my favorites. But I really dig, the usage of Ragman and just his story. I think right now it is Wild Dog, just because we're getting more Wild Dog stories. and we're getting more development on him. But when we start having side stories with Ragman, I think he's going to take it, because again, he's a really cool character that I cheered when they brought him in, just because I liked the character so much. I was like, okay, this is going to be awesome. We're going to have Ragman, Ragman in there, and I was cheering. And then I'm seeing, okay, they're honoring who the character, they're honoring this stuff. Little tweaks to the story. Okay, that's cool, but it's the same person inside there, that same type of quality. So I want to get to know this Ragman. I want to get to know what he's about, who he is.
I love that this sets up something as they're escaping. It grabs the gun, certain principle design, universal, and all that. I thought it was great. I love that this sets up a time problem. This sets up how the pod is inside the Wave Rider for the next episode and how everything's going to pay off. I love time travel. I love when you can look back and watch something again and go, oh, this caused the whole problem. It sets up a time loop. That is really cool. A big Doctor Who fan. I've always loved this kind of time travel-y stuff. We grew up loving Voyagers, and those type of shows. I love when they get real cerebral with this and you kind of go back and go, well, this moment means even more as they're escaping, because that ship is pretty pivotal to where everything goes from here. Yeah,
and again, it's one of those things where you wonder, when a writer is creating a time travel story, when are they designing what's the flow through? Because that little pod, that's the escape pod, is so pivotal in the next issue. In the next episode, it really links towards the next kind of time issue that they create. But you wonder when he's coming up with the idea, or she, or whoever created the story, came up with the idea. When did they? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And that's the thing I always wonder about this.
I don't think there's a right or wrong there. I don't know if they thought of the Dominators first, then wrapped around how do we connect the stories into this. I don't know what portions came first in this crossover. I don't know that there's a right or wrong path to it. It obviously germinates from an idea, and then you've got to put all the parts together. So I don't know. It's interesting to me to see how this. I would love to know more. I know that there was a short documentary on the episode with, I should say, the crossover that's attached to the Arrow show now. Because you're doing this through iTunes, right?
Yeah.
There's like a 12-minute documentary about Invasion.
Oh, okay.
I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I don't know if it goes into that, and I don't know if Arrow's the only one that's got it. But I just saw it today, and I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I like that. It's one of the things I'm loving about this iTunes delivery. And I'm sure all this stuff's going to wind up on DVD and Blu-ray as well. I like when there's surprises, like, oh, cool, now I got another documentary piece. Do you watch those extras?
You know what? I have been watching them, and I'm right now looking through my iTunes stuff. Each one of them has something associated with Invasion.
Sweet.
Well, Supergirl's the only one that doesn't have it. So Arrow, Legends, and Flash all have allied the Invasion complex.
I wonder if that's the same extra.
Well, each one has parentheses in the name of the show, so I think it's their version or their connection to Invasion. I'm assuming. After we're done recording, I'm going to watch those.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because I gotta find out, but it's again. There's so much that happened in this Arrow issue, this episode. I keep calling these stupid things issues.
I get it.
Because they do. It's a living, watching comic book. And I love that about every one of these shows. Every one of these shows has that same feel that I get when I'm reading the comic book. Every one of these has me thinking off page and thinking beyond the story. And what about this? Or what about that? And this Arrow episode had me 100% thinking of different ways they could bring back Dinah, and just different ways they could maybe have it so she comes back and not just a have it told. And again, I would do it in a Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow crossover where the Legends team figures out a way to bring her back, and I've got a couple different scenarios that run through my head where the team figures out a way to bring her back without completely screwing up the timeline, which would be almost impossible, but they figure out a way and we get the character back just because, again, the character is so cool. And then there's other ideas that maybe in the Arrowverse they could figure out, or Flashverse could figure out something. There's so many different ways that I wish they could do it, but that's the strength of all these shows. Every one of these shows has me thinking off page. Like with Arrow, I'm thinking about with Artemis, what's going on with her, because I loved how they introduced the possibility she may be a double agent for on Team Arrow, and maybe she's not. You never know. She's meeting up with the main big bad and saying, hey, they don't suspect anything. So does that mean she's 100% a villain? It looks pretty that way, but you never know in a comic book TV show or a comic book. You never know completely who's the bad guy, and I think, so I'm thinking about her, where she's going to go, how she's going to play out in this, thinking constantly Legends of Tomorrow, everything that spun out of Invasion, but also just the continuing story of their main big bads, that they're Legion of Doom, shall we call them that, that they're dealing with, throughout their time jump. There's so many things that, this Invasion story continued on, introduced a couple new weird quirks and threads that these different shows are going to have. But again, completely has me thinking off page. And I love when a TV show does that. It's the same thing that a comic book does for me.
Yeah, I agree. And that part is incredibly interesting. It's funny as we're heading now into start talking about Legends of Tomorrow, the last part of this crossover. And I honestly can't wait for more from this shared universe. I don't know. Is there any plans for any more crossing over this season? Have we heard anything?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything, but I hope they have it. Because you think about how Legends ends with them giving Supergirl the trinket to go back through time and all that stuff and travel through the worlds and communication. So that to me tells me they're planning, they're leaving the door open for more stuff. So I'm hoping we get more Supergirl crossovers. We get some Arrow crossovers, some Flash and Supergirl, some Legends and Flash team ups, because they've laid down some groundwork for Flash and Legends to have some crossovers. So they're laying the groundwork for multiple crossovers and future team ups. So I don't know what the plan is, but I'm hoping, and I'm like, come on guys, give me what I want, please.
Well, and have it be organic. Here's the thing: I don't want to. One of the things you and I have commented on this, it hasn't derailed the main stories going on in these shows, and that's pretty important. You can overdo it too, to the point where, okay, you're a lot of flash but no substance. So right. I don't need that. But I like kind of the way you were talking about it. It'd be nice to just have, it doesn't always have to be all 4 shows. It can be this show crossing over with that show, and even just having characters guest appear on shows, so that way their season keeps going on in their regular program, but you have characters appear, which is great too. Some of that's organically the way that it works in comics, and it should work here the same way. So I'm with you. I want to see more. I just want to see it where it makes sense and have it work out. I don't know. This stuff is just super geeky cool. What I love? Yeah. Every single opening has those Dominators staring down the Flash, and it is one of my favorite sequences because you can get, I grew up with rubber suits, especially in shows like Doctor Who that didn't have like huge budgets, where the actors made you believe that these rubber suits were these scary aliens. Yeah. You see the Dominators come out, man. There's no doubt about it. That's not rubber suits. I know it's CGI, but man, that looks real. And I love the look of that.
They really have that down now. And I'm so happy that just the technology has advanced to the point where we get some cool looks like that. Where you think back just a couple years ago, the CGI level wasn't to the point where you actually believed it was real. To the point where you're looking like, okay, yeah, that is CGI, right? That's not a costume or makeup, And when you get that disbelief as to, is this actually physically there, or how do they do this? Again, behind the scenes stuff, I really want to see how they did the Dominators, whether they were just a empty space that the actors had to act to, or whether they had the body doubles and the lime green bodysuits so that they don't appear on camera. How did they physically do that? That's the kind of stuff that I want to see, those behind the scenes stuff.
I absolutely love Victor Garber as the half of Firestorm. That's the professor. He's faced with his own time conundrum in this. His time conundrum is he's got a daughter now. And I guess I was really worried that meant his wife was wiped out. I didn't realize that for him, the new addition is a child that he never knew that he had, who now is an adult and's had a whole life that he does not remember. An interesting sort of piece on that, because it provides a conundrum. This person didn't exist, so you consider them, quote unquote, an abomination. But are they really? And this is a living, thriving person who has had impact on this world now. And how do you deal with that? I loved the way that his story played out. I liked that it wasn't caused by the Flash. I liked that it was caused by his own choices throughout Legends of Tomorrow. Because how much can you put on poor Barry? But in many ways, everything that's happening in this episode provides a great deal of healing that you start to see on this. And I loved that this story really wasn't, you could have made this just really a kick-butt four-parter where the heroes fight the villains, and you didn't need to put all of that exposition and character growth in there. It would have been a lesser episode for it, but we would have still been, I think, hooting and hollering over just how cool the battles were and how great it was to see these heroes teamed up. It has so much more meaning to me when they took the time to have this amount of character development happen throughout this. And it really is a sign of, I think, whoever, the showrunners, the writers, actors, everybody involved in this, just coming together and making this work in such a way that it's one of my favorite sets of film, TV, whatever, take the medium out of it, that has been done in a long time. Because I think the story just felt very big and filled with just great characters that I love. It's one of the better superhero team-ups I've seen.
Well, this is why I said in the very beginning, the last episode we did, for me, this exceeded the hype because of everything you just said, where it wasn't just cool seeing them fight alongside each other. Inside their own individual episodes, the story continued. These characters grew. Their story levels advanced, to the next, this didn't, this wasn't a pause in the action. This right here is a continuation on what they're dealing with. You're going to see real ramifications in the Legends of Tomorrow based on some of the stuff that happened here. Especially, minimum with the Doctor. Just look at, Canary, how, all the stuff she's had to deal with in this throughout this invasion, that's going to dramatically affect how she goes forward, and how she's dealing with, her time jumps and her dealings with time, especially having those moments where she got to see her sister, got to find out what it might have been. That's why I still think in my head, somewhere along the lanes, Legends are going to figure out a way to bring back Canary. Just because of, there's one point in time when she scolded Barry in the Flash episode about, how many times I wanted to bring back my sister but didn't. To me, this whole invasion story arc, I think, is going to introduce that concept into her finding out a different way to do it where it doesn't disrupt everything. It doesn't really destroy the universe. But again, I don't know. That could possibly be a storyline that, plays out of this. There's so many different things that could come from the story that I was like, again, great character growth and development throughout this.
I think so too. And here's the other part. Barry's not the only one that can affect time. Time Masters, our Legends of Tomorrow people, aren't the ones that can affect time too. We got Zoom running around.
Yeah.
And, Zoom actually is one of the major people that affected this. It isn't all on Barry. Because
actually,
if you remember how that episode played out, Zoom did some things on the way back that he referenced right directly to Barry.
Exactly. And that's why I've always thrown out there that Zoom did more of these damages to these different people. Like Cisco's brother, I 100% believe was killed by Zoom, not a car crash. I 100% believe Zoom found the brother, and killed him, made it look like a car crash, and it wasn't an actual car thing. I think it was Zoom. Same thing with, I don't know how Zoom could change the sex of the kid. I think that was just happen. But I think when they start breaking down some of these problems, they're going to identify that it wasn't, it wasn't Barry, it was Zoom. And I think that's, you talk about possible future crossovers. That's why I think a Flash Legends of Tomorrow crossover is a very strong possibility, because the Speedster, they're going to need a Speedster to fight a Speedster. And I think that is going to be the interesting fight where, they pull in Barry into the Legends show, and Barry helps them with that fight. Because that, for me, I think would be a kind of a neat, just dealings with, because how do you fight a Speedster unless you have speed? Well,
here's where I disagree with you.
Okay.
You're diminishing the Legends by doing that. This is supposed to be the Legends of Tomorrow versus their own Legion of Doom. In some ways, I want to see the growth of. That's where the crossovers can, and I hate them. I think what you're saying is cool, so let me preface by saying that. I do think it's cool. But here's where I would disagree with it and add a different thought process on it. If you bring Barry in, you've now diminished the Legends, because they couldn't handle Zoom. They had to have Barry come in. They're developing a Legion of Doom to go up against the Legends. What I want to see out of that storyline is the growth of the Legends so that they as a team overcome the Legion of Doom. I want to see them as a team grow stronger because of it. I think there's ways to do what you're talking about without it. Now, where you've got an interesting story there, how do you deal with the fact that Zoom coming back through time caused some of this? I don't know that Zoom was as targeted as you're saying. I don't know that he wasn't. You could be right. It could be that specific. But it also could have been Zoom on his way back caused one pivotal change that ballooned into all that. Because a lot of times all you have to do is change one thing in time, and it changes all of that when you put it back together. So who knows what Zoom did along the way? What one event could have caused all of that change? It's a ripple effect. Zoom could have done it targeted and deliberate. We've seen that in comics before. So you're right. That could be a thing. The question becomes, is it something that Barry's going to try to undo or not? Because you know what happens when he tries to undo anything.
Right. Makes it worse.
Right. So I don't know that we're going to see that episode, only because it kind of goes against the theme that's been shown here. I don't know. It's an intriguing story. I want the Legends piece. I don't want the Legends to be the lesser team of this crew. I want to see them grow and adapt in the way that the others have. So I'm protective of that. I think what you said's cool. So when I say I disagree with you, I do, but I don't. It's more of I like that team so much that I'm very cautious over their Legion of Dooms being developed here. I want to see them fight them. I want to see them beat them.
Yeah. And I agree with you, and to be honest, as you're talking, I'm nodding my head going, yeah, he's got a point there where, it's neat to, you want to see heroes call for backup, but there's a difference between calling for backup and calling to save me.
Right.
And if they're a hero, they shouldn't have to reach out and they shouldn't play the role of the person who needs to be saving. They need to knuckle up and be the hero. Now, I will amend my statement in that I would like to see them mention Barry or make reference to Barry about maybe fighting a speedster with a speedster and then having a reason why they couldn't pull him in. So I'll amend my statement in that I agree with you. I want to see the Legends take down their Legion of Doom. I want to see that happen, but I do want to see some reference to Barry, in this. Again, this is all a shared universe. Even if it's how did Barry beat this guy, to the point where they've got to have some form of reference to Barry in this, just because of the shared universe. It's kind of like whenever, in the comic book where, when Batman's fighting a Superman villain, and he has the reference to how Superman beat the guy, and he can maybe use that in his own way because he's Batman and he's awesome. But it's still that connection. You want to see some type of connection to the shared universe.
And here's the thing. I'd like the team up to be this. If they do go to Barry for help, the team up is a crossover episode where they team up with Barry to solve some problem. Barry gives them information how to overcome a speedster because they realize they can't pull Barry in because of everything he's got going on right now.
Right.
You know, I mean, there being some definitive reasons like why you wouldn't call Barry in, but them getting something from it. I like the idea of referencing him and going to him for help and things like that. I do see the point. It's interesting. And maybe even them referencing the fact that do we want to put him in a position where he has to mess with time again, you know, after what he's been through? Because this crossover would give me pause. You know, listen, he's a friend. Are we going to put him in this position? Look at all he's been through. He's literally just starting to move on from the last time this happened. Do we bring somebody in who's had a history of messing with time and is trying to get away from that? And I could see that being a conundrum. You're right. I want to see the reference. You and I are in complete agreement on this. And however they choose to handle it, I think is going to be cool. I love that. I love that. Like we're debating something that we don't even know is going to be a thing, because we care about these shows so much that this is the kind of conversation you have around comics, right? It's the geeky conversations that are way beyond the episode that haven't played out and may never play out, but they're super cool.
The interesting thing that just kind of something that dawned in my head, you know, with like the Smallville, we both love Smallville.
Yep.
But I don't remember us really having this level of geeky conversation about Smallville. You know, as much as we loved it, as much as we're like, man, this is cool, yes, you know, I don't know if we went this deep. And I don't know if it's because there's 4 shows, because you look at the combined number of seasons, it's a really developed universe that's, you know, interacting between each other. And Smallville just had the one show. But I honestly, I feel a better, you know, more connection to this universe than I did to Smallville. I love Smallville, not knocking Smallville at all. But I do have a closeness to this universe than I did the Smallville universe.
You know why? Because this is on now. I'm going to be honest with you. You can go back to any of your shows. I would love to listen to the episodes we did a few episodes on Smallville. I'd love to go back and listen to them now. I would make a strong argument that we were probably having just as geeky discussions on there. They were by their nature different because there wasn't time travel pieces or things like that as a part of it. But I would argue that we did in fact have debates like this and conversations like this about Smallville, because when that was out, there was nothing cooler. And I think the difference now is this is the show that's on now. It'd be like trying to debate our conversations we were having on this show around Infinite Crisis, you know, when that was out versus, you know, the events that are happening now in the comics. This is new. It's fresh. There's more to speculate about because it's not done. The difference with Smallville when we talk about it now is it's done. There is no new Smallville. The comics stopped. Smallville itself is done. It's a done issue. It had its run. It was great at the time. I think we were having as geeky a discussion. I do think that this is the next evolution, and I think Smallville was the forefather, so to speak, of this type of programming. And you know, I think other shows before that also led to it. I think we never had a debate about Lois and Clark on this program, but I think if we did, we would have been doing the same thing with shows like that as well, and keep going back and doing that. The nice part now is to your point, we do have 4 shows. So I think there is more to think about because of the nature that there's more shows. So I do think you're right that there is a point to that. When you have that much content, you can't help but think about more because there is more. So, I mean, I think you're right. I think there is an element of that, but I don't think if you break it down by Arrow versus Smallville, for example, I don't think our thought processes were any less depth-filled with that. I think that the current shows, though, have benefited greatly from the framework that Smallville laid. Because especially in the later seasons, Smallville was doing cool stuff like this. Those overarching seasons that they started to have in the later Smallville seasons, where the beginning of the end of the previous season and the beginning of the next season led to this huge whole season arc with a bunch of almost fill-in issues that would happen in between that furthered, you know, character development and stuff like that. I think Smallville laid the groundwork for a lot of this, and in a very cool way. So I don't think
Yeah, and I'm thinking back to their Justice League and their Green Arrow and all that, the conversations we were having back then. And I'm remembering my referring to Allison Mack's character as Oracle. I kept referring to her as Oracle because I'm like, she's Oracle. Come on, call her the name. I remember, it's stuff is coming back to me now.
Yeah, I really don't think that's the case. I think this is just because it's on now, and I mean, it's not. And don't get me wrong, I'm not diminishing the quality of this. It isn't. When you take a look at the amount of programming we have right now, and we still haven't done, we're going to have to do coming up at some point an episode on Gotham. We're going to go back to comics for a few episodes and just focus strictly on the comic material. But I do want us to come back, in the coming year and do an episode around Gotham because there's so much to talk about there. So please don't think we're throwing Gotham to the wayside or think it's a lesser show. It's just these are so tied together. How could we not do this crossover? This is a unique opportunity to talk about this because can you imagine 5 years ago us saying there's going to be 4 shows and they're all going to be DC shows and they're linked and they're going to do a monster crossover with the Dominators.
Exactly. And it's like when Supergirl first hit the scenes and it was on the other network.
Sure.
And you're like, oh, man, too bad it's on the other network. We'll never get a crossover. And I'm like, hey, they're going to do this one-time crossover between the two networks. Oh, my God, that's awesome. Next thing you know, hey, Supergirl's on the same network. What? And you're like, oh, my God, this is amazing. And it just within the span of 2 years, how much has this universe changed? Because initially you have Arrow, you have going, then you introduce Flash. Like, hey, this is kind of cool. I wonder if they're ever going to introduce more characters. Maybe have a Justice League type of thing. Next thing you know, hey, here's the Legends. What? Time travel? Wait, Supergirl? What? Just in 2 years, how much this universe has dramatically changed. What's going to happen 2 years from now? How are they going to change the Supergirl universe? Because you look at how much they added Superman. They have a physical Superman in the Supergirl universe. So who else are they going to introduce in that universe? Supergirl just had a great team up with other heroes. And she talked about how the fact that saying, hey, maybe my Earth could use an Oliver Queen and a Barry Allen. Does that, who knows, man, she goes back to her universe. Is she going to start searching out for some of these other characters? Maybe we're going to get a Justice League in the Supergirl universe, and it's not going to be Superman who started it. It'll be Supergirl who started it because she had this great team-up experience. There's so many stuff that this is going to play out in her show as well.
Yeah, that part I think is really interesting about this. This has really gone to an interesting level, and I can't wait to see more of what happens with this. So we're seeing the Dominator. I'm at the sequence where the Dominator roars, and we're seeing footage of these characters throughout history because they're looking back through time to actually capture a Dominator, and it makes a lot of sense. Like the only way for us to move forward is to actually get a Dominator of our own, get some intel, because we can't afford to not have the same kind of information that they have, if not more, coming out of this. I really liked the interplay of this and them having the debate over what is right, what is wrong, and how they should handle this piece. Cisco's time travel definitely in bit, I thought was really great.
Oh, Cisco and Felicity, both of them,
right?
100% made sense that they would jump on that. And I was sitting there raising my hand going, me too. I'm right along with them because, again, it's the whole, it so fits their personality, fits their character. For them to say, oh, okay, no problem, I'll sit this one out, would completely not fit. Plus, also, everything going on between Cisco and Barry made complete sense. And the fact that later in the episode, Felicity brings that up and calls him on that, and they have that conversation and they have that dialogue. Once again, beginning, middle, end, throughout this whole story completely flowed through. And those right there, 2 non-Legends characters who had a cool story arc in the Legends story. But also doesn't take away from the characters that are the Legends currently going on at that time having a cool story.
Ollie and Kara's debate, I think, was one of the coolest pieces of all this. Because showing his own discomfort over the differences between the two. And also, it's kind of the same thing you get from Batman in the comics, right? He doesn't trust unknown quantities. He also gets uncomfortable in superpowered threats, things that are beyond his grasp to control. Ollie playing that role in this, it's one of the reasons why when we have the debate about Batman being on this show, or being, on any of these shows, I feel like Ollie fills that role really well. And I constantly, I say this and I'm wishy-washy on it because from geek standpoint, I want to see it too. So I say that. It's when I see these sequences, though, I do think Ollie as a character benefits from the fact that he takes on the role that Batman would have had. And that part is where I really enjoy how this works with this character. So
I know. It's a tough call to say whether he should be there or not, because the archetype and the personality is there. Right. And you don't want to take away from Ollie. You don't want to take away from the story. But there is that little side geek that says, this would be cool. This would be so awesome.
And I agree. Here's the thing. It's when you say it, it's like I disagree and I agree at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it's the ongoing debate with it. I think what it says a lot about this show that I am such a geeky Batman fan that I am so protective of Ollie that I would say I'm not sure, because what would it do to Ollie? And I don't want that character diminished by it. There's sometimes I think there's a way to do it. If you do it anywhere, I would love to see it on Supergirl. I don't know that I want to see it here.
Mm-hmm.
I think there'd be an advantage to seeing it in Supergirl because she could reference, I met another guy like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, there's advantages for it. Here's the thing. If they did it on Arrow, I have enough confidence in the writing for this that it would work. And I would geek out over it, and I know that. I think there's a reason they haven't done it. Some of it obviously is because of what's going on in the film end, but man, we got 2 Flashes coming up. We got 2 Supermen.
We got 2 Supermen. They could pull this off. And it's funny because, she, in one of the Supergirl episodes, she references how her cousin worked with a vigilante once.
Right.
He's like a bunch of gadgets. So Batman, they've kind of implied Batman's already in their universe. And maybe he's not out of the shadows. Maybe he's still doing his thing. And it's one of those things where Kara really doesn't know he exists, but Clark knows. And he keeps, Batman does his thing in the shadows, doesn't, he stays to Gotham, doesn't go globally, lets Clark handle the global stuff. He stays neighborhood wide, and that could be how they do it. And so they could introduce her to Batman that way, where she's in Gotham and she deals with the Dark Knight. And it's one of those things where Clark's like, yeah, I've known about him. I let him do his thing. He stays out of my hair, I stay out of his hair, or however they want to do it. They could very easily have, Clark, Bruce Wayne, Batman in the Supergirl universe, which wouldn't take away, again, from the Arrowverse, because we don't know, because, again, 2 separate universes.
Ollie's admitting his own flaws, where he's having that debate and going, I need a sense of normalcy. I'm pushing back against something that I don't understand. It's right or wrong. I like that he's referencing the fact that he's wrong in this. And he knows it, but yet it's what he needs. And I love the debate because he's almost debating with himself. The Wave Rider, to me, I'm a big fan of, the Millennium Falcon, the X-Wing, the TARDIS on Doctor Who, the ships on Babylon 5, Battlestar Galactica, all that stuff. I mean, I'm Serenity, Firefly. I love the ship on that. Such a geek of ships. The Wave Rider, and seeing it through the eyes of Cisco and Felicity, I thought was really awesome.
And they kept grilling, Steel, who knows absolutely nothing about the ship. And he's like, come on, just go to the bridge. Come on, let's just keep moving. Like, what about this? What about this? What's this? I absolutely cheered and was laughing out loud throughout that whole sequencing. That was, again, perfect casting, perfect writing. That so fit those characters. They were the right people to have that geek out moment.
Stein and his daughter was one of the cooler sequences because you're faced with something that it's funny. I love how this story went because did you think with those flashbacks initially that it was his wife that was lost? Or did you think it was a daughter all along? You know
what? To be honest, I was thinking wife or something like that. Or I wasn't thinking daughter. And I do kick myself for not really thinking daughter. But it was one of those moments when he first meets her. That's where as he was sitting there talking to her, and he's, I was expecting my wife, I'm like, wait a minute. And right before she said, "I love you, Dad," is when it popped in my head. I was like, wait, is that his daughter? Oh my God, that is his daughter. It was one of those split second right before the big reveal. So I can't say I saw that coming, because I didn't. As he was doing the initial flashbacks, I wasn't thinking daughter, but it was when he shows up at the house and she was there, and that's when it kind of like, I thought, is this possibly? And oh my God, it is.
Yeah, and that was the thing I thought that they did really well, because it was teasing one thing. What a debate that is.
And the thing is, again, one of the off scripts, shows idea I had, he could very easily explain to his daughter that in time travel, there's an unknown side effect that affects the memory. And he could very easily throw out that line to her, and that would completely cover him, because there's no way the daughter could really ever prove it. Or even later on, that could set up for an event where the daughter proves that, hey, Dad was just giving me a story. He actually doesn't know I knew I existed. And it could play out the whole thing. That would be a great story between father-daughter, where all this stuff that happened, where before she thought it was just a side effect of time travel, it's now really because he never knew she existed, because she was an abnormality. She was a time flux. I can't say the dang word.
So is it
abnormality?
Did you watch Fat Albert? Did you watch Fat Albert as a kid? I was a huge fan of. Yes, I was a huge fan of Fat Albert. I always thought it was a cool show. Yeah, Mushmouth. That's exactly where I was going with it.
I know. I know where you're going with it, and I agree.
And I say that. Wait, if there's a character you're going to be, I always found him endearing. Honestly, that show, I'm a huge Saturday morning cartoons fan. And that was a huge Saturday morning staple for me. So the fact that you totally was not me insulting you, it was more, I'm like, it's kind of endearing. And believe me, I've done it plenty of times on the show myself. That part is interesting, though, because there's a point where he almost is cold. And sometimes I think that's a defensive mechanism. When you're scared of something, you distance yourself emotionally and shut it off. I loved that I could look psychologically into his head and say that was the piece that I thought was really cool.
Well, immediately, the one thing I was thinking in my head is he's being cold to her intentionally because he didn't want to have that emotional connection. Because in his head, he's thinking, okay, I have to get rid of her. I have to erase her from existence. So he didn't want to have that connection. He didn't want to have that, that personal thing. And we get that later on when, he and Snow are talking. Again, non-Legends character interacting Legends character, telling a great story, fits why they're there, fits, that connection perfectly fits. But a Flash character on Legends show, interacting, developing Legends, for future, that's one of the reasons why this is the greatest crossover ever.
Right.
I'm like, I was sitting there and I'm hooping and hollering that it was Snow who went with him to the house originally, and now it's Snow again interacting. It's Snow that he's having these conversations with. I love that.
Yeah, especially with everything she's going through, because you know what she needed, and this is an example of balanced writing. We needed a reminder with everything that she's been going through with some of the deception and lies, who she is as a strong character. And it's a show that you can put these characters in vulnerable situations, but then bring her back. I don't want her to ever become Killer Frost permanently. I don't mind that that's a part of her, but she needs to be the Caitlin. Like, I am very worried for that character right now. I love when they do this because it makes me worry more for her. It makes me care more for her as a character, which I think is awesome. Really well done. Steele's costume. Thoughts?
I'm a fan of superhero costumes. I'm a fan of the look that it's got to be a costume. It's got to let you know they're a hero. But I absolutely love Nick's comment.
I do too.
The fact that he's just like, what are you doing? You look like this?
You look like a star-spangled idiot. That. Word for word. You look like a star-spangled idiot. It's great.
I cheered with him. I absolutely cheered with him. And I love that. And even right before that, when Felicity is having her speech issues and she goes, blah, 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 and he goes, I'll take that means have fun storming the castle. The Princess Bride reference. I cheered for that one as well.
Yeah, that honestly, anytime they take time to reference geek culture like Princess Bride and stuff like that, that part, I'm with you. I really loved the choice on that.
Now, one of the other things that I did like was when they're looking on the scene and they're picking, like, let's go. And he's like, no, we wait for the stragglers. Let's find the weaker ones. Mm-hmm. Again, Mick at his finest, man. He is such a great character. I am so glad they did get rid of him. Once again, throughout this invasion, really showing again why they needed this character, why they need this archetype in there. I absolutely loved it.
So, Jim, I'm looking now at the scene where they actually capture the Dominator, and that part is really cool because you really do see some heroes stepping up at that point. You know, one of the things that I admire about Mick, Mick doesn't have powers. I mean, he has the gun, sure, the Heatwave gun, but Mick is just tough. I mean, and I love that he, even though, you know, he'll show fear sometimes or caution, he's a man's man. And I mean, he's very interesting in the way that they've made him this character that steps up in situations that he wouldn't have before. He's evolved. And he is a character you've got to keep on this show. Because he's really, out of all the legends, he's my favorite. Just because of the fact that he's such a fish out of water. He's this guy who was a villain who's now become, even though he's got the villain tendencies, and those are still a part of him, he's become, I guess, the true anti-hero, right?
Yeah.
Because he really does value this team. He has a loyalty to them. And that's something that's always been a part of the Rogues. Like, we're really seeing that he is a true Flash rogue from the comics and what their code always was. And it applies here, and it's really cool to see.
It's not just even... I don't know. I agree with you. He is the anti-hero, but you see the nature of the true hero in him that's going to come out. You know, you see that potential to be not just the anti-hero, but to be the hero. You see him. I could very easily see him turning into something else, even, you know, evolving even further than where he's at right now. He doesn't need to do it. He's still a great character and he's cool. And I agree with you. He is one of, if not my favorite legend. You know, he and Sarah dance back and forth as the number one spot, you know, but there is that inside him where you can actually see him becoming a hero, going with a Heatwave, hero type name and just, being Heatwave the hero, not just being Mick. You can see that. Yeah,
that part is really interesting to me. Imagine, could you look at a person ever and say, I need to erase them from existence?
Oh God, that'd be tough. It's Stein and his daughter. That's the thing I love about that. And that was the thing that I loved about this dynamic, especially, when he has this realization. He has this, I have to do this. This is what we do. We take out these anomalies. We make sure that, they don't exist. That's what the legends do. And so he has to do that. And I love just how he's looking at it and just the reality of it. And to be honest, I don't think I could. That's what I would, if I was in his shoes, I would be looking for any reason and excuse not to have to eliminate her, just because I think that would be that would rip me apart personally. Not only just taking a life, but the fact that you're in existence of your child. How, that's got to be the gut wrenching thing. That would be the worst thing possible. Yeah, it's kind of like those parents of the killers, where they're looking and like, yeah, this is a murderer. Yes, this is a monster, but this is still my kid. And you have that realization of, yeah, they did horrible things, but there's still that parental feeling. There's still that parental need to protect your child.
I agree. That part is... See, here's the thing. For him, though, he has no memory of that being his child.
Exactly.
And she actually is threatening his entire world as he knows it. So it's interesting, because I don't have kids right now. So imagine coming home tomorrow and I have a kid.
Yeah.
And not a baby. A full-grown kid who you don't remember your life with that person. Now, here's the thing. The longer she exists, the universe writes itself. So he's going to eventually start having those memories. We've seen that start to happen with people as that times happen. So there's something interesting about that piece in particular. I think it's easier in these shows when you take a look at the fact that somebody sees something from the outside and they go, well, I can wipe that out because you're not connected to it. But now he's had interactions with her. Like one conversation with somebody would be enough for me. I don't know that I could consciously wipe somebody out unless they were a threat. You know what I mean? Where you were, when I say a threat, I'm not talking about a threat to my life would change somewhat. I'm talking about like somebody would die. You know, so it's like if I'll use you as an example. You know, you're one of my closest friends. If I went through time and some change I made brought somebody into being that would kill you, and there was no way for me to stop it, I could go back through time and wipe that person out because there's a threat to somebody who's a friend of mine or, you know, a family member, or somebody close to me. You know, that I could do because there'd be that justification of if I cause this, if I erase this, it will benefit. But you run into that problem we've seen on these shows so many times where fixing something a lot of times makes it even worse. So it's an interesting debate. Now, in this case, this is different. This is somebody who doesn't hurt anybody. He's still married to the same woman. This is his daughter. Looking at her and getting to know her, I love Caitlin's piece on this. She's a living, thriving person. The debate to me starts to shift, and I'm like, Caitlin's right on this one. Caitlin's brilliant in this episode because really opens up his mind to Stein is a guy who likes to live in a very controlled world. So the fact that his world is out of control because of a choice he made, I get it. And I think it's very true to the character. I love as he opens up his mind and gets to see his daughter for who she really is. It leads to some great moments in this. And this is in an episode where this is really a crossover with the heroes fighting the Dominators. They didn't have to do this arc, but man, because they did, the story is so much richer because of it. I love that this was built on the Legends of Tomorrow show, leads into this, and further connects the story of Barry and his whole thing with all of this. Really phenomenal stuff.
Yeah. Well, and this story really first was introduced. This concept of this story was first introduced in Flash on the invasion, because it was in the Flash episodes when he found out when he and Caitlin first went back to the house and met his daughter. So in Flash, they introduced the fact that she is the daughter, and then they further it in Legends of Tomorrow. So I thought that for me, with his story, was again a great usage of the crossover to tell this massive. It's a massive, changing event in Legends of Tomorrow, but it's really just a small piece of the invasion story, and I love that. That's the thing that I absolutely loved about this. The whole Stein and his daughter and Caitlin usage, everything that played out with this.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think that part is incredibly interesting to me. That I don't know how you write a show like this and balance out the characters so well. I do think that there's some characters that had more of a spotlight than others, but man, they did a pretty good job of saying, hey, we haven't done anything with this person. We need to do something with them. And I thought it was really well done, the way that they managed to make that work. The alien piece with the Dominator, when the Dominator was being tortured, I think was something they saw in their world what the Dominators were doing to it, but then they saw this one in the past and they're like, there's an ethics piece to this. You can't see somebody treated like this. This goes back to atrocities. How can you watch an atrocity against anybody who's different, right?
Yeah.
I loved how that part played out in all of this.
Well, and the fact that it's the horn-rimmed glasses guy in the MIB outfit. Yes. The government agency, come on, and the horn-rimmed glasses, heroes. Those were stuff that I was hooping and hollering like, yeah! Again, classic, just and even like Cisco's and Felicity's reaction to this, saying, okay, they've just been abducted by the Men in Black, what do you think's going to happen to them? It's time for the cavalry to come riding in. And I love, again, team usage of these different characters, and I was like, man, this is the kind of stuff you want in your story. This is, the emotional question. Is it okay to torture the alien? Hey, we're sitting here. We have a chance to talk to this alien. So they're reaching out and they're trying to do communication with the alien. It's, again, the stuff you want to see out of your heroes. You want to see them have a higher regard towards life. You want to see them have this, belief that they're, you want to believe they're going to do the right thing when, it's needed. Not when they have to do it, but when they need to do it. It's one of those things. I love that.
Yeah, that I like that we got to see this old man and what he was like when he was younger. This part of time travel is stuff that was really, really cool. And I think it's something, this is wacky DC stuff that I think when they try to eliminate this stuff from DC Comics and DC programs, like, what mistake was there in the New 52? If there's anything, you and I both loved it. So I'm not changing any of that. But one of the things that they did that I think was a mistake was taking away some of their toys. And I think with Rebirth, what they've done is they've said, why did we do that? Let's put the toys back in and start doing it gradually through storytelling. And they're doing it. And maybe certain elements of this were part of the plan all along, but I think they escalated, certainly based on fan reaction on where it went. And I think Rebirth benefited greatly from it, to the point where I know I was reading somewhere an article, and I hope they actually do this. Marvel's looking to relaunch the X-Men series, and I think they're going to be doing the bi-weekly books, similar to what DC's doing for this purpose. And I actually really like that this bi-weekly delivery versus maybe don't do 8 titles of a single character. Find a way to keep the story going with 2. I like the rotating art teams. Actually, I think this is working really, really well. I like that different books do it different ways. I think we're seeing in these shows, they're taking advantage of all of DC's toys here. And we see it in the past with this Dominator sequence. I love the conundrum that even Mick, who is your traditional, bad guy, Mick gets it too in the whole Dominator sequence. And Mick is, I actually like the fact that Mick's becoming a really good guy with the brash. He's their Wolverine. I mean, without a doubt, to me, this is everything I've always loved about Wolverine. And I think it's great.
No, I love when the government agency decides to take out the heroes. When they're meeting Horn-Rimmed Glasses guy, and just how quickly this fight ends. Again, cool, neat dialogue, cool, neat. Just the choreography. In the fighting sequences, and the different characters going boom, 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 doing all their things. It was something that. Neat physical moment in the middle of a cool story development. Again, I loved how this series have been doing this.
I agree. Now, they're looking back at that's that ship again, and I know I mentioned that from last episode. They're fixing that ship as a way to let this Dominator go home. It's setting up a domino effect. And this is the piece that for Cisco is going to help him see his own role in this. And I love that. I love that this is the piece. I didn't see this going there, but I love the way it played off before. I like rewatching this now and seeing the puzzle pieces go into place. And that's something that I think is great. I love these shows because they do, a lot of these episodes, benefit from a second watching.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that it was, Cisco was one of the people who was really behind, who pushed really to rescue the Dominator. That really does help along with his understanding of what Barry went through. And Barry was just trying to help, just like Cisco was just trying to do what he thought was the right thing to do. And I liked how, again, it was a neat explanation because it took us 4 episodes to actually get his character to go from point A to point B, to actually go through and accept Barry. It wasn't a quick fix that everybody wanted. The other supporting cast wanted Cisco just get over it, man, move on. It's Barry, and he kept holding on to the fact that, hey, I'm allowed to be angry at Barry Allen. He messed up. My brother's dead because of him. And I loved how he held on to that anger. But now we're seeing, okay, I'm letting this go now. I'm realizing what he did, why he did it, and I'm capable of making the same type of mistakes. It was that understanding, forgiveness that you have towards a friend.
I agree. Here's the thing. We've got this in both of these worlds, and I think one of the things that I like about this storytelling, the New 52 did a great job of, I think, trying to take a look at contemporary fears and bring it apart. I think and eventually you want that shift to the light again. Like, I loved the Superman story. I loved that the world feared him. I love what they did with the new Superman. What I like now about having the old one back, it didn't diminish that story. It brought back the hope and the light. which is the piece that I've always liked with Superman. I wouldn't trade off what they did with the new Superman, the whole T-shirt bit when he didn't, when his powers were diminished. I actually really liked how that all played out. I'm not anti that story. I think it was great. I'm glad DC explored it. I'm glad that they found a way to bring back that Lois and Clark series and morph us into this. I think we as readers have benefited from going through that. By the end of it, I was ready for Superman again, like real Superman. And I think that's part of an experiment, right? It's taking you full circle. Here's what I like about it. I prefer organically when you do something like this to organically make the characters, if you're shifting to a brand new story, a brand new Superman, a brand new direction for Superman, going back to something classic, when you don't drop what happened before and you give us a closing arc and you organically lead into this character. I know I'm using the word organically a lot, but we've read stories where it was just like, plop, hey, here's something new. I mean, that's never as satisfying to a fan who likes continuity as playing it all out and finding a way to do that. Cisco's story with Barry, the friendship, and what's been going on here. This doorway they opened through this arc with these two characters, it's a lot more fun for me because they played it out in a way that was rich, and makes a lot of sense. And Cisco had to experience it, and I didn't see it coming in this arc. And I love that they did this as a part of the four-parter. And this is something that he dealt with, not with just their normal Flash crew. The whole gang was involved in this piece. Yeah. Everyone learned from this. I think it's really great. And yet you still had the people fearing what was different, like our agent. And wow, this stuff is really great. Barry being faced with the conundrum of turning himself in. And I love that they're having this debate at the Hall of Justice.
Yeah, but they have to have the debate.
But Barry being faced with, listen, I've got to turn myself in. This is my mistake. This is what I did. I'm the one that needs to own up to it. That whole piece is absolutely phenomenal because the whole team is then faced with this situation of, okay, do we let our friend do this, or do we realize that we're heroes and that we can find a better way? Don't let one sacrifice themselves. We as a team can come up with a solution. We as a team can handle this together. This is great.
Oh, God, yeah. And one of the things I loved the strategery for the Dominators, how they played all this out, where not even just, they're wanting the one Barry, but it's taking out Barry. It's launching their ships into all the cities and then having the meta bomb ready to go. They laid out a really cool game plan, and you gotta love when the villains have that. And it's even that, though, you gotta love the villains that kind of have a reasonable explanation for what they're doing. They're worried about metas. What if a meta gets Barry Allen's powers that has not, Barry Allen's personality? Something we see in Zoom. Right there, we're seeing a speedster who has all of Barry's powers, but does not have his moral fiber. We're seeing the damage that he's doing. So you can kind of understand the Dominator saying, hey, we don't want Earth to have these powers. We don't want them to have the metahuman gene. Let's get rid of it and eliminate it from them. And I love how you can understand where they're coming from. And they're still wrong, but you still understand where they're coming from. Those are the best villains.
Okay, Jim, so the last part of this, we're getting into this Dominators battle. I'm looking at the part right now where Cisco is really realizing his own role in this and how he did this. And this part is awesome with the whole vibing piece, how I love the reaction on his face. Yeah. The actor that plays Cisco is really, really good. It's fun. I don't know if you're the same way. I've never disliked Vibe as a character in the comics, but he's never been one of my favorite characters. I've always thought Vibe was cool, our interesting character and all that. On the show, he's phenomenal. This show is really a gateway to making Vibe cool. Very few times do I think the comic book character should be influenced by television. They really should look at how he works here. Although there's people who probably love Vibe that are like, Sean, you're an idiot. And I can respect that because I've had a lot of characters that I've liked before that they've messed with, and I wouldn't want anything to mess with the character. But from what I've read in the comics of Vibe, I do think Cisco has all of the best elements of that character in the way they handle him on this show. So I would just love to see this character maybe get another shot at life, maybe make him a part of another team or something like that and give him a shot that way. Because I like the character. I just want to see more. I would like to see him work in comics. I really
I'd say
would.
pull him into Flash. Pull him actually into the Flash comic book. Kind of how they did with Felicity, where they kind of pulled her into the Green Arrow comic for a little while. Actually pull Cisco Ramon, into the Flash, and maybe show him becoming Vibe in the Flash comic book.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I agree. I'm 100% agreeing with you on the character that this TV show version is by far the best version of Vibe I've ever read or seen or interacted with. I absolutely love this character, and I love how he became, everything that played out with him, and just going from being Cisco Ramon to being Vibe, and just the times he uses the powers but that's not his sole purpose on the show. His sole purpose isn't being Vibe. He's got a very solid part of his life that isn't remotely related to meta powers. He is a character in himself. He has his own strength that he adds to the team.
That part, the aberration. I'm watching right now Caitlin Snow talk about her as an aberration. I know we already talked about this one, but that dialogue really was powerful to me. Anytime that you reference an aberration, but then her flipping back and going, do you know what you're doing to this poor girl? This is a girl who's just focused on her dad, getting her dad to love her. I think we've all been there on some level with somebody where we've wanted that person just for validation of who we are. This moment between the two of them, where they're communicating and talking, and he realizes that he's just seen her for the first time, I just thought it was great.
Dude, that scene right there, it absolutely tore me up.
I was
sitting there and he goes, I just realized I've seen you for the very first time. I'm like, oh my God, that's great. And just the look on his face, the look on her face, just everything so perfectly fit in that moment. I'm like, yes, she's sticking around. All right. And you knew right then and there, she ain't going anywhere.
I want to see more with them in the future. And yes. This is something that Legends, because it's a team and they've got so many characters on there, has the ability to do. You can shift focus onto certain characters and really make it interesting. And I really love how this is playing out. Victor Garber is just a great actor. And did you watch the panel, the San Diego panel with him?
No, I haven't yet. I haven't watched any of those panels.
He has he does a great bit where this is not historically comic books and comic book characters have not been his cup of tea, but how much he's loving this world and the people that he's working with. I actually really respected the fact that he didn't say, well, my favorite comic was this. He didn't try to sell it. I actually liked the honesty, but also that he's loving being a part of this fantastic world and what he brings to it. I think he's doing a bang-up job as Professor Stein, and I think that character benefits from somebody playing him that doesn't come from the comic world. You know what I mean? He's kind of seeing it from the outside and really analyzing it the way that an actor would, and I think we're seeing some great development for this character.
And I think sometimes with the comic book character, you need somebody who's not a comic book fan. They're going to treat this as a professor who is thrown in this extreme situation, who's going to be a little bit of a fish out of water, but who will still have that code, still have that, that adherence to science and the laws of science and physics and, whatnot. They'll have that mindset. And that is the way you got to play Stein. You can't play him as the dun-da-da, I'm the hero running off to save the day. That's not the kind of character he is. Yes, he is heroic. Yes, he does make sacrifices. And yes, he is a legend. But in his mindset, in the way he looks at life differently than, say, Ray Palmer. Ray Palmer, you need a character, someone who's used to and comfortable to the comic book universe, who's comfortable, used to being a hero, used to being in a weird, uncomfortable costume and actually, pulling it off. That's the kind of guy you need playing that role. That's, again, casting for these characters are absolutely just spot on.
This part, when the whole team comes together and they rally behind Barry and then the Dominator ship opens up, was just such a cool moment, because I was ready at this point. I'm like, they've given us a lot of story. Everything's coming to a head. I'm ready for the big battle now. There was nowhere really they could take this any further for me. I needed at this point, let's go. Let's get them. enough. You know, and I really felt the pacing of this was great. They set us up to a point where, as a fan, I was like, all right, this next bit needs to be a really strong ending to all of this. And they did a great job of delivering this. It was great that it all of a sudden turned into teams getting together. Victor Garber shows up back on the scene, Professor Stein, and I was like ready for everything. It all converged. The team came back together from their little side stories, and we saw them be more powerful together.
And that's the underlining story of all the great superhero stories. When you have these team ups, you have that moment in the team up when you're like, okay, let's do this. You know, it's gut check time. Let's work together. Let's figure this out. Let's defy the odds. They say it can't be done. Well, we're going to do it. Let's take them down. And I loved, again, those true hero moments, those moments where you're like, hoorah, cheering just for the heroes, cheering for what they're doing. And I absolutely loved, this was a great team dynamic fighting, great team dynamic, multiple front attacks dealing with the problem. You know, it was something that fit and was very realistic to me. Even though we're dealing with extreme stuff in that we have a flying spaceship being powered by an assassin and a guy with vibing powers, down to, you know, ground forces with metahumans and guy, you know, billionaire who can shoot arrows really cool and all the craziness of this. But it still had that element of realism in how they approached this, how they had these overwhelming odds. And it wasn't simply one person beating everybody up. They had to have these multiple strikes, multiple locations, multiple occurrences to actually defeat them.
I know. That part is really great. The rooftop battle was probably one of my favorites because, again, it takes everything that has happened. You see Barry running around full speed, putting the devices on the Dominators. Each of the heroes keep maintaining the distraction. We see Vibe and her working towards finding a way to try and keep the bomb from landing, needing Firestorm's help to get that piece going. Everybody kind of working together, and we see Ollie and Supergirl have their moment. They hit every beat, every single thing you wanted to see that mattered because of the build. And that's why this was so much more satisfying, because here's the thing. If you take all of that exposition out, this still would have been a cool rooftop battle.
Oh, God, yeah.
But
and again, it still would have been neat because, you know, you just, again, the choreography and the layouts and just, I loved the couple of the moments where Supergirl would just, you're seeing her flying around just bam, 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 you know, dropping some power.
Right.
That, and see you later, Dominator. I did chuckle with that one. Ray Palmer is a fun character to have on a show. Now, the one thing part of me wished, you know, in this sequencing, and it wouldn't have fit, so I'm not going to say they dropped the ball by not having it, but part of me wishes we could have had Kid Flash throughout this as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think that would have been a neat moment instead of Supergirl doing Supergirl doing the running. You know, you have Barry running, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Kid Flash shows up, and he's helping out, and it would be Flash and Kid Flash doing the super speed stuff. You know, and they could have taken Supergirl and had her trying to hold up the meta bomb. You know, that would have been, so it would have been the Legend, you know, it would have been the ship and Supergirl holding that up. I think that kind of would have been kind of a neat dynamic. But again, I can't even take away from the story that's told here because this was a great story. This was a great usage of multiple teams fighting, you know. Again, the choreography I've been saying time and time again, but also just the interaction and the dynamic between all these different teams, all these different shows has been absolutely wonderful. I loved how they did that.
This is one of those moments where there's very few times on our show where I get speechless over something.
Yeah.
And the coolness of this battle. I wanted to watch this while we were chatting about it just because I wanted to see and make sure that we talked about every element that was really cool about this. But watching Firestorm morph this, I love the character. I love that they've created, in their own way, they've created their own Firestorm for this.
Yeah.
Because we've got a new character manifesting this with Stein, and I like that. I liked that choice of saying, let's take a new character and really take Firestorm in a different route, going off of its rich history with Ronnie, but let's bring in this new character who has elements of what everyone liked about. It's actually, in many ways, he has elements of Ronnie from the comics in there with the football star background and all that. So they didn't throw anything out the window about Firestorm. They just kind of took it all, put it together with a brand new character, and this show benefited from that. I actually liked that risk because there could have been some fan backlash, and I haven't seen a lot relating to it. And I really do think this choice with Firestorm was the best possible one for the television show.
Well, and I agree, 100% agree with you. I think the only backlash we had was when he first came on the scene and people were saying, why isn't it Jason? And I think that was the only, the only backlash I ever saw on this. But then when they let the character grow and they let the character develop, and especially this past season, we've seen, Jax really develop as a person, as a character outside of the Firestorm Matrix. I think that for me is something that has been, again, another character I'm absolutely loving on this that I liked before, but he's a character that has really made, really fit this team. And I'm like, this is cool.
I liked the president's speech about what it means to be a hero, masked, not. I liked that she was referencing not only the heroes that were up there, but all the other people that helped out as a part of it. Because I like that in comics when they talk about, the true heroes and those type of things, because it does reference in our society that we need to appreciate, our military, our police, all those people that really are good people. And that's something I always find that's neat in comics. And we're seeing that happen, I think, more and more. And I think it works well. The whole thing is just, this bit with Ray Palmer talking about his cousin, how she looks like his cousin.
Little funny moments like that throughout this is, again, it didn't take away anything. Because even Felicity before that, it's like looking in a mirror. And then he's like, hey, she kind of looks like my cousin. I love that. I again, laughed out loud and thought those were some really cool, fun little bit moments. Like, you think back to the Arrow episode when Ollie, before they had the full recollection, and Sarah's like, "Hey, if I would, you're lucky I'm not a trained assassin." Kind of little chuckle there. Or Mick and Sarah checking out the president. Come on, little funny bits like that throughout doesn't take away from the seriousness or the moments that are being presented.
I agree with you. The big three, and see, this is what these shows have got their own trinity, and they're standing right there. It's Supergirl, Arrow, and The Flash. I love that this was the formation of a new trinity here, and I really like this trinity. I think it's why I'm becoming very protective of them. I didn't need Superman in this episode. I love their Superman, don't get me wrong. I think these three being spotlighted, though, because these characters have become so important to me, I like that this is their trinity.
Yeah, and it fits. Again, 2 years ago, would I have said it fits everything? No, I'm like, hey, we kind of need to have Superman in here. But you know what? We have Superman right there. It's just Supergirl. She's called Supergirl, but the same qualities, those same characteristics that I love about Superman, I get out of Supergirl. And I think that for me is one of the strengths of this TV show. And that's one of the reasons I love Supergirl, the show, so much, is because I'm getting my Kryptonian fix. Those same wonderful qualities that are in Superman, we're seeing that. Those same great qualities we have in Batman, we're seeing it. The Flash is the Flash. Not only is, he's the beacon of hope. He's Barry Allen, who will, no matter what, he can fix it. He can do it. He's fast enough. He is the fastest man alive. But not only that, he is hope. He is that person who's going to inspire everybody. He is that true ultimate good guy. I sense a group hug kind of thing. He is that true good guy. And I love that about him. I love that about each of these different characters.
Yeah, that part is really neat. Now, Victor Garber having to say, you can't tell the team about what happened with my daughter. There's an anomaly that's been created now. He's protective of it.
Yep.
If the team knows, in many ways, by their current mission, they have to correct it because it's what they do. So it's interesting now where he's like, I can't. And I love it. I love the fact that that's becoming a thing because the story was so emotional.
Oh, big time. And here's the thing. I immediately thought off page. And the way, eventually the team's going to find out about her. They have to. You know it's going to. But the way they're going to acknowledge and let her survive is the fact that if it wasn't for the daughter, they never would have defeated the Dominators, because she was crucial in creating that little nano device. So I think that's going to be their way to, when eventually she is acknowledged, that they're going to justify keeping her around.
Yeah, that part's interesting.
Again, it lays out so many different stories that are going to come from Legends of Tomorrow. Right. And I think that for me was the greatest part about, this crossover, that each of these stories have other characters that are going to come out of it. Like horn-rimmed glasses dude, Mr. Smith, he's not done yet. He's not done yet. Come on. This is a guy who, he's that great, evil bad guy who thinks he's doing the right thing. He's not done. Just being sent off to Antarctica does not slow down a guy like this. It's angered him, and he's going to really make his the comeuppance are going to come. There's definitely going to be some there's definitely going to be some repercussions from this. From him. Now, maybe it's not going to be this season. Maybe it's going to be next season. And I think that's going to be kind of a neat thing, or who knows if maybe the Legion of Doom is going to reach out to him. Maybe he joins the Legion. You never know where this guy's going to pop up next, but he's going to.
Yeah, and that you're right. That's the piece that I want to see more. I do hope this character does appear elsewhere, because he's a natural foil. And wherever he appears, it's going to be really great. I loved Kara's handling of him at the end. That whole end sequence was great. Send you to Antarctica. I think that was great. Really cool stuff to see from her. Because it's great to see her in a powerful mode. Because Supergirl is a confident character. I like that Kara's human and we get to see her awkward side and things like that. But yet she protects those she loves and cares about. And this team would be those people to her. And I really love that she's like putting an exclamation point on her visit right there. It's great.
Yeah. It's a little extra and again, being Supergirl, she does it with that sweet, sunny smile, but the whole time she's just like, forget you, buddy. Now, I like the fact that Diggle, doesn't, and it's funny because it's the whole thing where he doesn't forgive Barry. He tells Barry, you got to forgive yourself. But he's like, you're a good person. I trust you. And I like that moment that Barry and Diggle have. Again, Barry is that guy that, you got to trust and you got to believe in. And, you're seeing all these different people are saying, Barry, we're cool with this. We're cool with you.
The Sarah and Ollie kind of bittersweet conclusion where the two of them kind of have this moment together where they, more than anybody, I think, were more affected by that, other than Thea, were more affected by that whole sequence. And knowing that they both have become stronger from walking away from that. Sarah, as a leader, I think, of Legends of Tomorrow was the most brilliant move. I'm so torn. I love the character of Rip Hunter. I'm going to be very curious to see if they bring him back, and if they do, what role he'll be in. And I think he'll be great when they do, because I'm sure they have a story for it. But wow, was it great. Barry, go ahead.
I'm in the same story. I'm in the same boat you are with Sarah as the leader. I absolutely love her as a leader. And to be honest, I would rather, when they bring Rip back, I don't want to say him as kind of like an Overwatch type of view, but I don't want Sarah to lose her positioning. I don't want her, to, lose what she's gained, because the character has gained a lot, in this season so far. And I don't want to see the character take a step back, because, when he does come back, and he's going to come back, I'm very protective of her, just like you are. And I think that's going to be the interesting play, what they do with her.
The only final part was Dig. I liked how, Diggle always has this weird relationship with Barry where he's afraid of him because of his metahuman powers. And I like at the end that he has this bit where he references what he always tells Ollie. You have to forgive yourself first. And he's a guy who's going through his own transition due to this. And I like that that's something that, he references in this. He uses that to help Barry grow. This show was very cyclical. And everything that's been happening to these characters outside of it came together and helped. everything that happened inside of it came together and helped. And I liked that in the end, everyone was like high-fiving each other and sending each other off, like, I get it now. I'm sorry that happened. We're a team. You can move beyond this. Let's all become something more because of it. And I liked, what, this episode had a lot of closure to it. And a moving forward with hope.
Yeah, that's been, again, even the ending with Barry and Ollie just hanging out, having a beer. And you need to have those moments where two friends get together where it's not to save the universe, where they're just relaxing and just hanging out and talking. And I want to see more of those kind of interactions, or even just, they don't have to show it on the show, just make a reference, that Barry was, Ollie can make a comment that Barry was just there, or vice versa. Barry can talk about how he just was just over just hanging out with Ollie. And even someone could say, well, they have a problem? Like, no, just hanging out with Ollie, and have that reference later on where they're still kind of having some interaction. Just like they could have moments where they have Cisco communicating with, Supergirl, and not have it on screen, but have a reference that he was just talking to her or something like that, or vice versa. They could have these interconnections that, the actual occurrence occurred off screen, but there's reference and notation of it in the story. Because that's something, again, with this combined universe, I want to believe that stuff is happening.
The ending sequence with the two of them having a drink together and knowing that, like, their relationship has moved forward more. I've always loved in comics those moments where you see them with the characters. It's something I grew up with. It goes back to the 70s. I know it's well beyond that, but that was when I first started reading comics. Seeing characters get together and have dinner or whatever, those out-of-costume things made these people feel real. And the fact that they brought that into the show, I think it's something that, the Avengers movie, when they were all together at the end in the closing sequence, one of the coolest sequences in the world because it made them feel real, right? Doing that here makes them feel real. This is smart. It's really good writing. They really understand these characters and how to make us believe. Part of comics for me and comic and fiction medium, I want my disbelief suspended during that time. This is my escape. It actually makes me better in my job, makes me better, in life, because in that moment, I'm transported to this new place. I get to enjoy it. I learn some lessons along the way. We get some great action, great storytelling. It's there's some hope to it. This had a lot of positive to it. It's funny how I can watch this and then I'll watch like Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, which I've referenced many times on the show. I love. I get it more now, though, why there's the disdain for it by certain people because of the fact that the one thing it was missing, and I think that particular film universe hasn't gotten to yet, is the true sense of hope. And I want to see that come with the next movies. And I think you can build to it. The trick is you have to shift that universe to it to make it believable. You don't want to make the next film foreign from everything that came before, but what you want to do is shift it the way that we've talked about in this episode about a lot of the things that have happened with this. Again, that organic shifting. So you don't alienate your fans that have been enjoying it. You don't disappoint your fans who've been looking for something more. I think you can do that. I think you look at these shows, you've really got to take a look at what they're doing right. Because I think there's a really great template here for the TV to inform the film. From the multiverse aspect, I think you can do it. And I think that part's kind of cool.
Now, with this crossover, is there any character out there, whether they're existing in the universe already or have not been, that you would want to pull in? And we're gonna pull Batman off the table because we've had plenty of conversations about him. But is there anybody else out there in the DC universe, whether they've just been a blip introduction or they haven't even been mentioned, that you would say, who would really be awesome in this? So-and-so. Who would you, any ideas on with you?
Oh, God. I mean, there's so many. From a geek out standpoint, I'd love Starman. Jack Knight, I think that character would be great. Just because I thought they handled the JSA so well. And I think you could tie him into that, being the next generation.
Well, the Star staff, they have the Stargirl staff. They've already introduced it. So
right.
Definitely he could be her legacy character.
Or he could be hers. She was in the past, he would be present day. He got the
Right,
staff
that's what I'm
from
saying.
her. Yeah.
That's what I meant.
I'm sorry. You and I are seeing it the same way.
Yeah.
Oh boy, Adam. Here's the thing. You go through the list, and there's really so many that I would love to see. It'd be funny to have a Robin done on one of these shows, where instead of the introduction being Batman, it being Nightwing or Robin, and that's how you get the Batman reference.
Have a Dick Grayson in the series?
Or Tim Drake, or Damian.
Damian.
Yeah, I mean, that type of stuff would be cool. I don't know. I think the slate's wide open. There's a lot of characters I'd love to see. Plastic Man would be fun. I think what I don't want is the guest of the week to start becoming a thing, and they haven't done in this. Like, I like Jonah Hex. You know what's nice about Jonah Hex? Every time you see a Jonah Hex appearance, it feels like a continuing arc, right, with him? Yep. I want it to be that type of thing. I'd love the Hawks to come back. There's characters that we haven't seen again that I would love to see come back and have another go-around. I really don't have a singleton one that I'm like, I'd really love to see this one. I like the surprises. I like that there's like Citizen Steel being a part of the Legends of Tomorrow. Who saw that coming? I love that. Heat Wave being my favorite character on that team. I didn't see that being a thing. So I guess I want more of those kind of surprises. I want the honest answer to that is, I want them to surprise me with the next character that I'm falling in love with because of the way they handle them.
Yeah.
That's what I really want. See,
for me, they've introduced the concept of aliens now. And I would love for them to expand out in the alien universe. And, for me, whenever I think alien universe DC Comics, the first thing that pops in my head is in Brightest Day and Blackest Night. I would love to see the Green Lantern Corps get somehow brought into the mix. Even in the Supergirl title, they bring in the Green Lanterns would fit better in her universe just because they have more of an alien focus. But could you imagine how cool that would be in Arrow and Flash and Legends of Tomorrow, or one of those where they introduce the concept of the Green Lantern Corps? Because Flash has made reference to Ferris Airlines, where because they had one of the old airstrips got shut down when one of their test pilots disappeared. So they made reference to it, and that could very easily have been Hal Jordan, getting snatched up and becoming a Green Lantern. That could very easily be. They've laid the groundwork for the Flash and for Green Lantern in this universe, and for me, that's something I would absolutely love to see.
It is funny that you reference it being on Supergirl. I think one of the things we've talked about a lot is him appearing on Arrow, and I don't know that I necessarily need that. Even though that the two of them have been the hard-traveling heroes, I think Barry and the Flash have become that for me, you know what I mean? So I don't know that I need him there. I like your idea of Supergirl a lot. I'll be honest, I wasn't thinking of that, but that would make a lot more sense. And her universe, one of the things I really like about it is you can do things in her universe and not be beholden to bringing them into. I wanted her to be somehow morphed into through Flashpoint, being a part of the same universe as the others. I actually like this much better now. I think this was a smart move keeping it this way, and I was one of the people saying, and I admit it, I really wanted to see it the other way. I don't now. I think this is absolutely brilliant. I think the separation works really, really well. And it's made this, I think, universe better for me because it opens up a slate for Supergirl where you can do things over there. Like you could do a Batman over there if you want to. You can do, and have her have comparisons when she comes over. Green Lantern you can do over there. So there's a whole different guest star route you can go. It'd be interesting to see if she has her own versions of some of these characters. You want to be careful doing too much of that too, though. I think what ends up happening, I like them being judicious. I think there's only so many characters you can really do. I think your character development of your main cast needs to be your number one priority. Because why are we so passionate about these shows? It's because of that. So I think they're doing it really well. I want to keep them to keep doing what they are doing. Add more to that. Keep revising it and evolving it with their pace. I think their pacing's phenomenal. So I think that's the piece that I really want to see protected on this. I think they know when to add and remove characters to the show to keep it fresh. I like that they're not doing it the same way on each show, though. I like that what's his name? Oh, I'm so drawing a blank right now. On the
Stein?
Flash. Stein. No, not Stein. On the Flash. Who's their guy that's come over from the different worlds?
Oh, Wells.
Wells, I'm sorry. I like that they have used Wells to spruce things up a bit and bring in Kid Flash on the Flash to add a new little twist. I like that the time travel made changes to present day versus getting rid of characters, because Caitlin and Cisco are really important to me. Wells being from a different world, doing different versions of Wells, that's working for me as well. And Wally is great. I don't need them to be dumping cast members right now. Arrow's done it a different way. They didn't really dump anybody other than the fact that people have died, and they've let that stick, and I appreciate that and the way that they're doing it. What they've really done well, though, is as they've created the new Team Arrow, they found ways to bring back in the other team members in different roles. And I love Thea having a chance to be a part of the team in this crossover, reminding us that she is Speedy, but she's retired. And why wouldn't she want to be a part of this? I don't know, there was something really dynamic in the handling of this whole thing that really worked for me. And I have a lot of faith in DC TV. I want this to keep going. These showrunners are doing such a great job. I hope that they're not overextending anybody, and they continue to bring in the right support people to keep these shows and their budgets protected. So, good stuff.
A scarlet costume ejects from his ring, and in a blur of motion, police scientist Barry Allen becomes the Flash.
G'day, Jim. Brett from Australia here. Just wanted to chime in with my 2 cents on the crossover, the massive DC TV event. Man, it was so good. It was like reading a comic crossover for the first time. Man, it was just amazing. I enjoyed every little bit of it. All of the Easter eggs were just perfect. Although I'm a bit slow when it came to the Hall of Justice. It wasn't until the Legends of Tomorrow episode that I realised that the Star Labs looked like the Hall of Justice. So yeah, I felt a little bit silly when I finally realised that, and then watching it on the second occasion, realised it was there all along. Well, are you okay, buddy? Cool. Yeah, you can have a little drink. Here you go. Sorry, the 3-year-old there who also enjoyed the crossover, as did the 7-year-old. No, it was really, really good fun. Loved Kara. She was just so upbeat in comparison to everybody else. The scene with Barry and Ollie at the end, where they decided just to kick back and have a chat and a beer, was the perfect ending to the show. And the crossover, Legends of Tomorrow part of the crossover was incredible. The time travel bit was really well handled. I wasn't sure how they would manage to fit time travel in, but they did it perfectly. And the evil General Bloke was just spot on. Reminded me so much of General Ealing in the old Captain Atom comics. So, brilliant crossover all around. And, oh man, I wish they could do that once a month. That would just be amazing. Okay, Sean, Jim, thanks again for your podcast, boys. And if I don't talk to you before then, have a great Christmas. A very merry time with you and your families, and all the best for the new year. Thank you again for another amazing year of podcasts. Whenever I need a smile, I know I can put on your podcast, and it lifts me up, it makes me happy, and I get to talk to my mates. So thanks a lot, and a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you both. See you, boys.
I think he's kind of in the same boat we are, where you mentioned earlier references to characters, and I think crossover-wise, I think this sense of the larger universe is something the comics, I think, do really well, where you don't have to have characters in your issues every month or anything like that. Sometimes just the reference to them, or even them on a screen or something like that. And I think these shows are starting to do it more organically, too. I love that they've given communication methods for the Legends and for the Flash universe to Supergirl. And it'd be curious to see what happens, with her relationship. Like, I want to see her team up with Ollie. I really do. Yeah. Where they just have a team up together for some reason. And that stuff I find fascinating when it works like that. His excitement, one of the things I liked that he was talking about too was the things that he missed, I think, initially. I think we were both referencing that in our own commentary about how there were things the first time through we didn't catch, and you were glad you caught it the second time through. The Hall of Justice I caught right away, and I think the only reason why is I've been on like kind of a Super Friends frenzy lately, so I think that it's just been on the brain. I just got from I don't know if you've ever seen this Figures Toy Company. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
My buddy Jim is a big action figure collector. He always has been. That's his thing. He's not like the comic fan like you and I are. That's always been his thing. And he found this company called Figures Toy Company that they got the license to put out reproduced Mego action figures. So they're the actual Megos we grew up with, but fully reproduced using the original molds. I actually got the Batman Crime Lab that I had as a kid, the bus.
Really?
They re-released that. Brand new. And I had that as a kid, and I'm like, I always wanted that as like a display piece. So I have that sitting on my shelf right now with the Batman and Robin in it. It's like, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I felt like I was opening it up for Christmas again. I hope they do the Wayne Foundation, because I'd like a brand new one of that. I see it on eBay every so often for an excessive amount of money, but it's always missing parts. So I'd really love to have that beast again. But I'm digressing a bit. What they're also doing now, though, is they're taking the Mego line. They've made an entire series based on Batman 66. So the Batman and Robin look more like they did on 66. Same thing to Bruce Wayne. But they also have all of the wacky characters that were on that show. They've also taken to releasing Mego figures now of characters that never were Megos. I just ordered the Wonder Twins with Gleek.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they did that whole set. I got for Jim for Christmas Apache Chief. They made Apache Chief and Samurai.
They made an Apache Chief
and Samurai. Remember Samurai?
Oh God, yeah.
Yes. So they've started creating a lot of the characters that never were Megos, and putting them in, and I think it's really great. So. And they've expanded to the supporting cast of Superman and things like that are in there. So it's really cool. But it's Figures Toy Company. I've never shouted them out on the show before. But that's why I think the Hall of Justice was on my brain, because of stuff like that. And it's fun. It's actually fun to listen to other people's reactions to this, what they caught and what they did and what they love about it. I love that kids are watching it because, for us, our gateway into these characters or into the pop culture that we grew up loving, right, was originally things we saw on TV as kids. And it's great that he's having that opportunity to experience that with his kids and enjoying that for the first time. I think my favorite moment with any of these TV shows was Gotham. When my brother and my dad were watching it independently of me, they just were watching it because it's this police crime drama, and they started asking me questions about Batman. I mean, I never thought there'd be a time in my life where either of them would be asking me those questions. I'm like, and it was not because of me, it's because of the show. So I love that these shows are bridging a new audience to be exposed to these characters. I love that the film's doing it. I love that animation's coming into it. I love that the action figures and things are being re-released and brought back out to a new generation, a new audience, and for the old-time collectors. So this stuff is all I think it's a lot of fun right now.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat, you're talking about just the gateway and the introduction and all that stuff. And it's funny because so many people in my family are now watching these TV shows, like mom and my sister watching Supergirl and Flash and loving it. I know, our buddy Joe and his kids are watching the whole superhero universe. His kids are digging it. And every so often, whenever I meet up with them, we'll talk a little bit about it. Nephew over in Italy has actually started listening to our podcast now. He started on episode 1, and he's going through the whole list, and eventually we'll catch up. Of course, Brother Bill has been watching and, reading and listening and whatnot, and his kids. So I love the fact that there is these connections that family has with this. And it's the neat thing about these shows are, they do have a darker feel sometimes when they kill off a character or they're dealing with some serious issues. But in the end, there is some really cool family moments, some really good times when you can have that where you're watching it with your kids, you're watching it with your family. You can have these conversations about this stuff. And we talked about it when we were just going over our light episode that we did on these last two episodes of The Invasion, where there's serious, deep ramifications being explored in these TV shows, but they're not doing it in a way where they're waving their finger at you saying shame, shame, shame on you. They're saying this is the way we should be, and it's trying to that whole lead by example type of thing. And I loved just how they introduced these deep concepts and these explorations on humanity.
Yeah, that stuff is really neat about all this, and it's a lot of fun. And Brett, thanks for calling in on this. I actually loved hearing your thoughts on it. It's really fun to share these experiences together now. That's one of the advantages we have, I think, with the internet nowadays, is the fact that he referenced previously the fact that we've all become friends. I think through the podcasting medium, but I think Facebook, Google, being able to, Skype and all this kind of stuff. It's really great to be able to have these conversations together about these topics now in a way that we wouldn't have been able to before. Because this used to be, for me, a very isolated hobby. Now it's like most of my conversations revolving around comics are with others all the time now, and I really like that. It's revitalized this hobby for me in a way that I never saw coming. And it's such, I know you and I have had and I'm sure everyone, out of people listening, you're probably all nodding your heads too. It seems like life seems to get more and more hectic. It's, in my case, I've been working my job. I've been taking 2 classes for my principal licensure, and none of this is complaining. It's just life. I've been selling 2 homes. We just moved into a new home. It's like been a whirlwind, and none of that's complaining. That's just life. So don't take the negative piece of it. But I think one of the reasons why it's not complaining is this stuff gives me a break, and it's that sense of it's a complete escape from any of those things. I really enjoy the opportunities we have to not only sit down and read comics and get caught up on the television shows and, I play games and all that kind of fun stuff, but it is the opportunities to record this and chat about this with you and then through voicemails and stuff with others that I really look forward to. It's a nice outlet from escape from everything else, because you and I don't do anything relating to this. As a career, it's nice to be able to just enjoy this as fans and have fun with it.
Hey, Sean and Jim, it's David Wallace here. Glad to hear the podcast is going so well. Been really enjoying the latest episodes. I wanted to chime in on something that, Sean, I know that you talked about a couple of episodes ago, and that was the Batman Telltale games. So, just this past week, episode 5 was released, and actually I should preface this by saying, Jim, I know you said you haven't played it, and just in case anybody else hasn't played it, I just want to let you know that this email is a spoiler email. I will be going in depth into the plot lines, twists of the video game that I'll be talking about today. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, you better go and play it and come back so you can better enjoy this email. Sorry, I'm trying to steal somebody's gimmick there. So, I wanted to talk about the video game because I think it's fair to say, as DC comic book fans, more so than perhaps Marvel comic book fans, and more so than perhaps any fictional medium that has ever existed, to be a DC comic book fan means that you have to sometimes let certain continuity go. DC's history has been ripped up, torn apart, rewritten, re-edited, re-engineered numerous times. Sometimes the main continuity has had it done. A lot of times it's Elseworld stories and things like that. So we've, had the story where Superman was found and raised by an Amish family. We've had the Earth One stories. We have all sorts of weird different interpretations. And for the most part, I think, as a DC comic book fan, you kind of let things go and let things just, water off a duck's back almost. You're not too worried whenever they retcon continuity. But there was something about the Telltale series that was rather surprising for me, because I was surprised by how negatively I was affected by a certain change that they made within the game itself. Now, I think the biggest problem comes from the fact that for the first 3 chapters of the game, I really, really enjoyed it. I was so happy with the way the game was developing and things like that, because I was really, really expecting a big twist, like this left field, out of nowhere revelation that was about to come in Chapter 4 or Chapter 5 that was really going to cement some of the ideas. The idea that I'm talking about is the backstory that they give to the Wayne family. In the video game, the main character is the main villain of the piece, the main antagonist, is a character called Lady Arkham. And it's revealed throughout the course of the game that Lady Arkham is the daughter of somebody whom Thomas Wayne commits to Arkham Asylum, wrongly commits to Arkham Asylum. And it's found out right at the beginning of the game that Thomas Wayne, and along with Carmine Falcone and Mayor Hill, kind of ran Gotham with an iron fist. And I was waiting for the twist. I was expecting early on, Falcone dies near the beginning of episode 2, and I was expecting that the revelation would be that Falcone faked his own death and he would be behind it and all of that stuff. But that's not what happens, and there is no twist, and we're left with the revelation, because Alfred confirms this, that indeed Thomas Wayne was in league with them, and that Thomas Wayne was committing people, including members of the Cobblepot family, to Arkham in order for this unholy trio to go ahead and basically take control of Gotham. Now, at first I didn't have a problem with it, but the more I think about it, and now that the series is over with, the more I really have a problem with this. And I'll tell you for why. I remember a few years ago, just after 1 year later, when Grant Morrison did his run in Batman, and he did the Black Glove, Dr. Hurt, and one of the ways that they attacked Batman was psychologically by sort of putting suggestions that his family were actually weren't the pillars of society that Bruce believed them to be. And I really have a problem with the idea that if you tarnish the image of the Waynes, that Batman could continue on, bearing in mind that his mission was based around the idea that these 2 virtuous human beings were gunned down in a senseless act. It's a bit like Gotham as well. There's a suggestion that it wasn't a senseless act. And I can kind of get away with the fact that somebody was responsible for it. But the idea that the Waynes would bring it upon themselves through acts of evil that they perpetrated really doesn't sit well with me. And I'd be interested, Sean, now that hopefully you've finished it, that I'd be interested to know what your take on it is, and whether or not this has affected you in any way, shape, or form. Whether or not there's a comic book out there that you guys have read that has retconned continuity, which you think has actually worked in negatively towards a character. I know certainly, Sean, I know you're a big fan of Hawkman, and Hawkman's continuity has been, again, ripped up and torn apart and rebuilt time and time again. So I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Anyway, just to not end this on a completely negative note and me having a go at this game, wow, are we enjoying an amazing time. How good was that last Aquaman arc? Like, super, super good. It was fighting the Shaggy Man. Really, really solid. I'm loving the Superman books, as always. And Detective might be the best comic book that DC is producing at the moment, if not for the Superman books. Wonder Woman is absolutely fantastic. Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns is amazing. I recently just got caught up with that after a trip to the States, and wow, super, super good. Everything is so, so good at the moment. It's unbelievable. But yes, anyway, tell me about what you thought about the game. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you guys. And have yourselves a Merry Christmas and a safe New Year, and I look forward to hearing more episodes soon. Thanks. Bye.
First of all, thanks for putting the spoiler warning at the beginning of that. I think that's really important, mainly because of the fact that for our listeners, that you and I tend to have a little bit more latitude because of the fact we do this podcast as far as, when things are spoiled, just because of the nature of the beast. And you weren't like screaming to me, "Hey, Sean, pause it. Stop. I don't want to hear it." Which, if you
Hold on. I absolutely love that spoiler. I got to go with, first off, that spoiler warning you did was outstanding and gets a... And yes, I did do the motion.
Yeah. One of the things, there's been times on the show where Jim and I have had to spoil things for each other because of the podcast, where we've wanted to spoil things, especially during Speeding Bullets, for the purpose of that conversation. In the case of this one, I am so torn on this. First of all, I really enjoyed the game. I will say that overall. I think your review of it was very fair. My resolution for the game and why it's working for me is because at a certain point, I realized the game is completely 100% Elseworlds. They introduced characters in new ways. I think they stuck to most of what I adore about Batman. That decision with the Waynes was one where I'm like, ooh, I really wish they hadn't done that. I actually hope they do a season 2 and do a little more development of that, because I would like to see, kind of to your point, some validation for the family. I don't think it takes away from Batman's mission. I think, here's my take on that one. I think the Wayne family's death and his belief in his parents served as the catalyst for him to become Batman. I think his mission has evolved into much more than that. He does look at Gotham as his city and righting the injustices of Gotham so that no one goes through what he went through is his mission. So I don't think finding out that his parents did that would stop him from being Batman. It would change his reasons, and his reasons would be to make sure that, first of all, he would feel a certain sense of responsibility, and he would feel the need to carry on his mission to make sure to right the wrongs done by his family, and to make the name mean something more than what it did due to it. I'm not a fan of it either. I agree with that point. I do think overall it was a great game. I liked the episodic nature of it. That part was an interesting puzzling choice to me. I'm not sure why they needed to do it without valid. I actually liked it as a part of an arc. I was with you. I was assuming that they would fix it. I'm kind of torn because I also think it's bold that they did it. You know what I mean? It's an interesting choice to not. I think the assumption to fans would be that, oh, they're just going to go and fix this. I thought it was a bold choice that they didn't. And because DC has been so rife with Elseworlds, I accepted it for that reason. But I don't find a single fault in your comments on it. I can see why it bothers you, because clearly I'm going back and forth on it myself. I did like the game, though, and I honestly hope that people give it a chance and play it, and that they do a season 2, because I think that the substance of the whole was well worth it. I liked that the choices you made in the game had serious impact. There were times in the game where you could choose to be Bruce Wayne, or you could choose to be Batman to resolve multiple situations, and choosing one choice or the other had a major impact on the story. There were certain points where you had to choose to save one person over another, major impact on the story. There were choices where you had to choose between even protecting yourself in 2 different ways. There were 2 different places you could go in 2 different situations. And I'm referencing in particular a situation where in episode 4, you had to choose between going to Wayne Manor, or you had to, it was episode 4 or 5. I think it was episode 4. You had to choose between going to Wayne Manor, or you had to choose between going to stop Oswald Cobblepot from taking over all of your tech. Both of those had major ramifications and impact on the story. I liked that. I liked that the choice, it was very much choose your own adventure for those people that were fans of that, and it worked. So my resolution to it, because I guess the way my mind works, David, is I try to find a way to resolve it. So the thing that was bothering me doesn't. And my resolution was, it's Elseworlds. I'll accept it as Elseworlds, and it's a good Elseworlds story. Because there's enough Batman in there that I really enjoyed. But that part is the one that hit me. Nothing else they changed bothered me. That was the only one. So admittedly, that was my... I'm pretty much, when they do games, pretty open-minded to some of the changes. I don't know if you played the Arkham games at all. The one I'm thinking of in particular is Arkham VR. Arkham VR explores, and I'll do this trying to be spoiler-free. I've already mentioned on the show before. It involves you seeing things through Batman's eyes from when he was poisoned. And that's the only spoiler I will give you in that end. And when he was poisoned, it was affecting his mind. You need those two pieces. The problem is, it was affecting his mind and he was running around the city investigating a crime. So I will leave it there and say that in that particular one, it was creepy. Probably one of the first times I've ever been scared playing a Batman game. I was actually terrified in this because you had the headset on. And the cool thing was, when you first start off, you start off on the top of the Gotham City police station, and you're looking down, and you literally can do a full 360 look around. You can look down at the city down below, which gives you this real sense of being on top of... I mean, it was very, very cool. But as the game goes on, the creep factor of this investigation you're on starts to build. And the ending's very creepy. There were certain bits in it where I'm like, my Batman world would never have this happen. It bothered me. That was something where... Actually, you know what, Jim, I'm going to put my own spoiler warning on this one because I can't really talk about this without getting spoilery. So I'm going to get spoilery about Batman Arkham VR. So if there's somebody from this point on, that's what I'm going to be talking about. So if you want to fast forward, I always put in the show notes, you can leapfrog this voicemail, go to the end of the podcast, and you're safe. I won't reference it again. But I am going to go spoilery here on this one, and I don't want to ruin this game for anybody. I'm already starting to go there, and I don't want to ruin that. So if you intend on playing Batman Arkham VR, the experience, leapfrog this and go to the end. And Jim, are you okay with me talking about this?
Yeah.
Okay. So Batman's poisoned by this Joker virus, and because of that, he starts to take on traits of the Joker. The Joker virus actually makes people into the Joker. Batman, because he was poisoned with it, there is a crime he's investigating. It's the death of Nightwing and ultimately the death of Robin. Batman's the one that did it.
Wow.
Yeah. So needless to say, I had a little bit of a problem with this, and it freaked me out because you're investigating a crime where you're the one that did it, and the clues are starting to point to that. And when I say you're the one that did it, because of the fact that you're wearing the VR headset and you dress up as Batman, you start investigating what happened to the two. And you start seeing images of yourself as the Joker. You look in mirrors, and you see the Joker looking back at you. And this is all stuff from the Arkham universe. And I was sitting here like, there's nothing scarier. And Jim, there's points where you have to turn left and turn right, and you're seeing different things happening all around you, and you have to turn around. And you will actually see memories of this stuff unfolding around you. And you start to put two and two together and go, this wasn't somebody else. This was me. I mean, it's like, whoa, mind blown. It's why I had to put a spoiler warning on this I don't want to ruin this for anybody, but for those of you that have already experienced it, and I know, Jim, you're not in the venue of getting a VR headset anytime soon. It was the creepiest experience I've ever had in my life, and uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. So I was playing this, and I was like, whoa. I haven't gone back and played it again yet, but I want to for the Riddler trophies, because there's Riddler trophies in it that give you extra bonuses, and I'm like, oh, I want to, from a completionist standpoint, I want to go in and play the game again. But it was one of the scariest experiences I've ever done. There's this really cool bit where Robin's trapped by Killer Croc inside this cell, and you think that the big bad that did this to Dick Grayson put him there. It's true, he did. You're the one that put him there. And you're trying to rescue him, and during the rescue, you end up seeing in flashbacks in your mind, you're the one that killed him in the rescue.
Wow.
Yeah. So you really went there with the intention of rescuing him, but it just, woof. It's a very dark story. Now, how did I resolve that one? Arkham universe is very Elseworlds. Batman was injected by a Joker virus. He wasn't himself. My Batman would have overcome it.
Right.
But But you do find out at one point in time when you're in the Batcave, you're analyzing your blood sample and others. And if you do your own blood sample, you realize you've got the Joker virus. I mean, it's like, whoa. Which is very true to the game universe and canon. But I was like, whoa. So, yeah, that would be another time where I was like, I really enjoyed the experience. There's nothing cooler than putting on the Batman outfit. My favorite moments were in the Batcave when I was analyzing my own blood. You can look through case files relating to the Arkham games. You can throw batarangs, and what you do is you reach down to your utility belt, you pick it up, and you throw it. And I mean, your arm's throwing it. You can do it with your left or right arm. You can use the grappling hook, and you are seeing through your eyes what that looks like. Wow.
It's funny because on one hand I'm like, man, that'd be cool, but on the other hand, the visual stuff, like standing on top of something as simple as standing on top of the building and looking down, would freak me out. Just because of me and my heights and my issues I have with heights and all that stuff. So on one hand, I'm like, man, that'd be awesome to do those games. On the other hand, I'm like, no way. There is absolutely no way I am going to do that.
Yeah. It was, it was pretty intense. So I don't know, that stuff was, I've never been scared playing a video. I shouldn't say that. The Resident Evil games are kind of scary and stuff like that, but I've never been that, like, you jump, those jump shocks. I was creeped out because I was in this world. There's one part where you're in the asylum and like looking around, and dude, I felt claustrophobic there. So the answer is, did I like the game? Yes, it's brilliantly done. Did I like that choice? Very torn, because it's not my preferred choice at all for Batman, and David and I are very in sync on obviously what we prefer from Batman, but yet I can't argue with the experience I had. So it's really bizarre, and I've had people ask me since then, should I go play that? I always try to put a disclaimer on it. Yeah, you might want to experience it, but you might also be offended. I mean, and I give them, it's kind of what I said with here's the thing, I played that before playing the ending of the Telltale game. So that was outright offensive to me at certain parts. Yeah. So like the Telltale game, I was kind of like, well, okay, so they did this. It's kind of a breath of fresh air. Because, I wasn't Batman killing my friends or wards, however you want to look at it. So I guess that may have softened the blow, so to speak, of the Telltale ending, and it's probably the reason why I didn't have such an issue. But here's the thing, I liked both experiences for the good things about them. I give them credit for being bold with the uncomfortable things, but really, really tough. And admittedly, those were parts of it that did you like that? I think you could have freaked me out different ways. Here's the difference. Sometimes those choices become the difference between me going, I really enjoyed the experience, which means I won't replay it again. So like Arkham VR, by all extensive purposes, I should be flopping it on and going through and playing it again because it's this really cool Batman experience. I'll play it again for the Riddler trophies, then I'll probably be done with it because of the uncomfortable nature of the story. It'll be like one of those really cool Elseworlds Batman graphic novels where I'm like, I really enjoy the Elseworlds experience, but it's not going to be one of those that I have to have the absolute edition of. You know what I mean? It'll be like, I'm glad I played it. Cool. Great experience. Give them credit for what they were trying to do with it. But I have to move on. It's not going to be my Dark Knight Returns, so to speak. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Interesting. I didn't expect this tangent, but I give him credit for he's right. It was controversial, and I don't know how else we could have done this without being spoilery. So yeah. Thank you for starting this off with a spoiler warning, and I hope I didn't ruin Arkham VR for anybody who didn't want to know what happens in it, because that's why I put a spoiler on that, because it's really the only way I could give David an honest answer. I haven't had that happen in comics except, you know what it was? All-Star Batman and Robin. I had trouble with the portrayal of Batman in that. Remember? Yeah. We talked through that. Yeah, that was an area where I liked the story overall for the portrayal of Robin and Commissioner Gordon and stuff like that, but I do not like I'm the goddamn Batman. I'm not a fan of that. But I appreciated the very beautiful artwork and other elements of the story. Robin was enough for me to keep me going, so it was that. So, yeah, there's elements like that ruin stories for me. Those are ones I can think of off the top of my head. Yet I still want them to finish All-Star Batman and Robin. I don't think they will at this point, but I would gladly read the ending of it just to see where they were going to go with that story, to see the conclusion. But I was not a fan of Batman in that, which is very hard for me to say as a Batman fan. I don't like your Batman. So this Telltale game, if I was to put a scale where my discomfort at Arkham VR was about a 9, but I'm glad I experienced it. So I would say the discomfort was a 9. My discomfort for the Telltale, because I played Arkham first, was about a 5. I think the Arkham really softened the blow for me on the Telltale one. So it may be why I'm not 100% in David's place, but it's only because of the shock to my system for that virtual reality one, where I'm running around killing Robin and Nightwing. Hey, come on. I mean, the solution to that mystery is that I did it. It's like, whoa, and I was Batman? Ooh.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one.
That trumps the Waynes.
Yes, that trumps the Waynes.
So that's kind of, maybe that helps understand that one a bit more. I would actually love to see them take both of those experiences now. I would love a season 2 where we've moved on from the Wayne story now and work on the great things that I do think that game warrants a season 2. I would buy Batman season 2 in an instant. I liked it enough that I would play more. But I agree with him on his caveat. So interesting. Thanks for the call, David. It's really, really good. And especially his comments about Rebirth as well. I totally, really agree with all of his comments. That's really good.
Spinning with great speed, the Flash creates a protective vacuum around himself.
I want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388 4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. It's always in our show notes, and we love having you part of the show. And actually, David Wallace sent us an audio file via Skype. Feel free to do that. And our email, by the way, is ragingbullets@icloud.com. Feel free to send us that. We have a Gmail one too, ragingbullets@gmail.com. It actually forwards to that. So feel free to use either of those if you want to send us an audio submission. We love having you part of the show, so feel free, if that's your preferred method, to get us an audio file that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website. That's where we give you news on when the new episodes are being released. We send that out to Facebook and Twitter. We have a Facebook group community. Actually been participating in the Secret Santa this year. I just got one of my gifts. I got the Ranma 1/2 2-in-1. They re-released the manga in these 2-in-1 volumes, where it's 2 of the previous volumes collected in one, and it's in the original format where you go backwards. Well, backwards for us, it's forwards for them. So I've been interested in those, so I put that on my wish list, and Happy Days Volume 1 and 2 I got. So I want to thank friend of the show, Isaiah, for taking care of that for me. And I got to send out gifts to my Secret Santa person. So I really liked it. And so for people, if you haven't joined the Facebook group, consider joining. This stuff is fun. It was Jeremy put it together through Elster. And so Jeremy totally initiated this. I'm not taking any credit for it. I was a participant and really want to thank Jeremy for putting it together, and to everyone who participated. I think it's just a really cool idea. It was fun to kind of geek out. It was a small group of us, but next year, the limit was $30 a person, so it wasn't, a lot. So it was fun to get in there. With the Facebook community, I want to shout out something, too. I know for some people that you find things like joining those different communities because the fact they send you email blasts intrusive. Remember that you can go into the control settings and actually have emails sent to you as a digest. You can have it send no emails to you. So you can just be a participant that pops in every so often, just check out what's going on, and you don't have to have this thing hammering you with messages you don't want. The nice part is it will send you emails on threads that you respond to. So if you just want to keep following that one, you can do that as well. You have a lot of control over them. It's a great community of people, and I do encourage people to join. And I just want to thank everyone who's a part of that crew over there. And I reference Jeremy because, he deserves a lot of credit for being our moderator over there. But there is such a great crew of people over there who are regular participants that you really want to be hanging out with. And I just want to shout them out as just really great people to be around. We're also on Google+. I have a PlayStation Network account. It's Raging_Bullets. So feel free to add me on with that one. And we just love connecting with all of you. So please feel free to join us. Jim, we are sponsored by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCBService.com?
Well, of course, they're bundles, 50% off, continuing support of Rebirth, continuing support of Vertigo, continuing support of Young Animals. Again, that's all 50% off of those different bundles. Check to see what they have. Pick your titles. It's a great way to save some money. But also speaking of 50% off, they're doing the Wonder Woman George Perez Omnibus Hardcover Volume 1 as well as Omnibus Hardcover Volume 2. Both of those are also 50% off. Volume 1's $37.50. Volume 2 is $49.99. That'll take you from issue 1 through issue 45, plus a couple annuals thrown in there. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, the latest releases are out. They have the Batman Volume 9 trade paperback Bloom, 45% off, only $9.34. They have The Dark Knight Returns, The Last Crusade, 45% off, only $9.89. They have the Justice League of America Omnibus, The Silver Age, Volume 2, which is 45% off, only $10.99. Martian Manhunter trade paperback Volume 2, 45% off, only $8.24. So there's something available in all price ranges. So if you're looking for cool things to grab, this is the place to go. They have it from all comic companies, so it's a great way to check out different books and things that you've wanted to have. It's a great way to get caught up on things you haven't seen before. They do deals that are up to 75% off from time to time from various companies. So it's a great way to get caught up, add yourself some, especially if you're on a budget, add some extra reading to your library without killing your wallet. That's InStockTrades.com. I want to thank both sponsors for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, next episode, we are going to come back and we'll release this one before the Christmas holiday. We're going to come back and talk about Batman, Action Comics, and Cave Carson. So we will see you then.
Bye!
On November 13th, Sean Whalen was asked to stop constantly talking about comic books. That request came from his wife. Deep down, he knew she was right, but he also knew that someday he would find someone that would talk to him. With nowhere else to go, he appeared at the home of his childhood friend Jim Segulin. Sometime earlier, Segulin's boss had requested that he shut up about his comic books and never speak of them again. Can two grown men put out a DC Comics podcast without driving each other crazy? It's Raging Bullets, the DC Comics fan podcast. With Sean Whalen as Dr. Norge, and Jim Segulin as the Sensei of the Whatnot and the Duke of You-Know. It's a spoiler podcast, so they will go in depth into the plot line, story twists, and whatnot of the comics they are reviewing. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you may better enjoy the show.